Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3. Hello.
Hello, I've tried unmuting the audio. This is Dave Zelenak. Is there any audio on your end?
Hi, Dave. This is Ryan. No audio.
Great. Okay.
Well, I mean, we are talking, right? But it's the folks in person that we cannot hear.
Oh, okay. Should we send them a note saying that we're talking about them?
I did send a chat to them.
Okay. See, okay, gotcha. Okay, all right, thanks. We'll see how this goes.
Yeah, Dave and Ryan, this is Larry. I can hear both of you very well, but like you say, still not hearing the presenter. And here's another chat saying that they can't hear it either.
Can you guys hear me now?
Okay, got it.
Yes.
We're good?
Yes,
Everybody's
Jim.
good. Okay. All right. Thank you for letting me know that, Gail. Item number 6, capital maintenance and public transportation contracts. City of Colorado Springs. The one with a little face.
When it turns on red, you're good to go.
Gail Sturdivant, City of Colorado Springs. Can everyone hear me okay? All right,
Yes,
perfect.
Gail.
Thank you. So the city of Colorado Springs is bringing 7 contracts forward for approval today. The first one is actually going to be a credit for the Cascade Avenue over Cheyenne Run Bridge Replacement Project. The city was able to receive additional federal funding and would offset, or it's going to be returning funds to both PPRTA and the city's general fund. Normally with a credit, we don't necessarily bring a contract amendment, but because it's over the 15% of the contract value, we wanted to make sure that we brought that back for the CAC and the board for their approval. Our second one is for the Tut Avenue Extension Project. If you recall, the first half of that extension project took place in 2016. We are finally figured out the right-of-way and property acquisition needed to complete the second phase of that project. This contract is to bring Classic Engineering Services in to finish their design work that they started back in 16 to complete that. That is a value of $57,400. We asking for the CAC's recommendation for approval of the board for that item. Then the next 2 contracts, and I'll talk about them a little bit together. They are maintenance crack seal contracts, one for seal coat and the other for elite surface, excuse me. This would be for the first year of a 5-year potential contract with the option years. The initial contract value is going to be $0 with the potential to add task orders up to a total aggregate across all contracts in this order and this realm to $750,000. Item number 5, we have traffic signal upgrade. This is, we wanted to make sure we brought this to the CAC and the board's attention that the city of Colorado Springs would like to leverage the buying power on a state contract to purchase signal equipment. Just want to make sure through that, CDOT went through and selected that contractor. It is AM Signal LLC, and they provide basically bulk price savings across the state and is consistent with the equipment the city wants to use in their signal systems.
Will this involve using compatible equipment, or are you going to eventually change over to state?
So with this particular contract, we still get to use the equipment that's compatible for the city and the city's system, not necessarily with what the state uses, but under this contract, we are still able to leverage the competitive pricing, and it's a 21% discount.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next item is the Academy Boulevard project, the one that runs from Bijou to Airport Road. This is going to be a change order to AECOM's contract for some additional property acquisition and utility investigation and design work with some additional conflicts that have been identified in the intersection with Airport Road. And the final.
Gail, I'm
Yes, sir.
sorry, one quick question.
Yes.
It mentioned in here some stormwater and some of the drainage. I think it's south of airport water pools pretty badly there before you get to the dealership, and along that there's a kind of directly across from the cemetery, if I'm thinking correctly.
And maybe you need to show me exactly what you're
Okay,
thinking of,
that's
Jim.
okay.
I know down in the Bijou area, we have a lot of water ponding issues.
Okay,
If there's something else in there, maybe we're
Okay.
talking about the same spot and I just got the cross.
okay, that's no
wrong.
problem. Thank you.
And the last one we wanted to bring to your attention is another change order for the Southwest Downtown Pedestrian Bridge. We have some
Red
costs.
I didn't say anything.
Anyway, so this was be for change order 6, where we would actually be currently decreasing the amount of funds PPRTA's contribution into this contract and picking up and basically replacing those RTA funds with the Southwest Downtown BID. Just to be forewarned, we will have a change order that will be adding some RTA dollars likely next month or in August, but just want to make you aware that we are reducing the PPRTA contribution at this point. One thing we did add to the memo, so as you can go through this change order, as you are aware, this is a complex project and you guys have been going through it for a long time. We wanted to show you what with the current contract value, what the different funding sources and the amount of funds are. So that is on page 3 of that memo, if that's helpful. And so those are the 7 contracts the city is, would be happy to take questions for, and otherwise we'd be asking for the CAC's recommendation for approval to the board.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Carlos?
Yes, on item number 5, AM Signal, I'm just going to need to recuse myself. AM Signal is a vendor for my employer, so I'm going to just go ahead and recuse myself for the entire vote.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion, Joan?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move that we accept all of the city's 7 contract items as presented.
Second.
Okay, so Joan moved to accept and Reb a second. Any further discussion? Good job, Gail, on piggybacking with CDOT. That's a good move. Anytime you can do that and save money, that's a smart thing to do. So
Thank you.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries and recommendation to approve. Thank you. All right, county.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, CAC members, Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County. Today, we have one item for your consideration. This is the first contract for the Mesa Ridge Parkway Improvement Project that is listed on the PPRTA list projects. And we are proposing a contract with Wilson and Company for a fee amount of approximately $800,000. This will include preliminary and final design. The project is in the southern part of the county, and it will provide the next 2 lanes of roadway, and it will include a bridge design and construction. We'll design for this phase, bridge design, and then 2 significant intersections there. The one at Mesa Ridge Parkway and Powers Boulevard, and then also Mesa Ridge Parkway and Mark Sheffel Boulevard. So we're excited to get this project underway and going. We did have a large amount of right of way that was dedicated by the development down there. So I feel like we can really move this project along quickly. So if there's any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer those.
Am I correct? And there are 2 lanes that are there now, one in each direction that, okay.
There's an existing 2 lanes. They were built by a development down in that area, and it's always been planned in the county's major transportation corridors plan to add the additional 2 lanes. We feel like this will take some of the pressure off Fontaine Boulevard and provides a good east-west connection between Mark Sheffel and Powers Boulevard. And so we are asking for a recommendation from the CAC, positive recommendation from the CAC to the Board of Directors.
Joan?
I would move positive recommendation for the Mesa Ridge Parkway project for the county.
This is Larry. I second that motion.
Okay, Larry, thank you.
Clarification. Is your projected amount, total amount for that at $9 million?
The project budget as originally done in 2012 was I believe, right around $9 million. I'd have to go back and look.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the county's project. Any further discussion? Okay, not seeing any. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Say nay. Okay. Jessica, question. The motion carries. Thank you, Jennifer. Are there just like 6 people here? Is that all that's on the video?
There's more.
Okay, so are you watching if someone raises their hand or?
You don't watch for hands raised, it's all verbal now.
Okay.
So if there's a nay, they need to speak up.
Yeah, okay, so we can't see everyone at the same time and see the agenda and the screen. So if there's someone that's on Zoom that has a question or a comment, please speak up so that we don't leave you out. Okay, Where am I? Item number 7, member government and other reports, City of Colorado Springs Transit. Brian?
Yes, thank you, Jim. Good afternoon. Brian Vituli with the City of Colorado Springs Mountain Metropolitan Transit with your monthly transit report. So we are reporting April 2021 ridership and comparing those to April of 2020. So now we're getting into comparing present day conditions to what we were starting to get into last spring with COVID-19 restrictions. So for our fixed route ridership for April of this year, we provided a little over 151,000 trips. So ridership in April of this year as compared to April of 2020 was up 13%. And so this is the first full month of service decreases. Well, last April was the first full month of service decreases due to COVID-19. For our ADA paratransit system, we provided a little over 7,600 passenger trips this April. Comparing that to last April, that is up 289%. That's not a typo. And for our specialized paratransit taxi choice option. So this is it's a non-ADA specialized paratransit service that goes above and beyond what we need to require with ADA. But this is for trips that are within 7 miles or less from an origin or a destination. So we just reinstated this program last month, well, in March of 2020. And that's still kind of slow to respond. And finally, for our van pool services, we provided 884 trips this April, which is up just about 150% from April of 2020. And going to the last page of your report, this is notice that we will be having a fall service change. Thank you all to the approval of the PPRTA budget amendment last month. We have a lot of money to add additional services. And at the time that this report was submitted last week, we were still uncertain whether this was going to be our final proposal or not. But what you see in the report is in fact what we will be going to the public with. We'll be having another virtual public process, which we've really had very good success with the last couple rounds. It seems that the comments that the public are providing are really well thought out. They're actually getting a chance to review the materials and are really providing some really good feedback. And we're getting more people participating than we normally do with public meetings. So it's something that we're definitely going to consider going forward, whether we have a hybrid public process or keep it virtual. We're really happy with the results of the public participation. But what we're planning to do is probably June 14th, we'll be producing another video, which is a presentation of all the service changes. And we'll be posting that to the public probably the week of June 21st, leaving that open for, 10 days to 2 weeks for public comment. And then our proposal is going to be somewhat split between implementing this fall and implementing next spring. There are some services that we need to acquire new vehicles for, and that takes a little bit of time for them to build buses. But what the 5 items that you see on the last sheet of your report is what we're going to the public with this fall. So that includes fixing the on-time performance issues that we have on the weekends with Route 11. We'll be adding Sunday service to Route 22 and also adding Sunday service to Route 23. And we'll be converting the new Route 37, which is the Amazon Airport employee workforce shuttle, to a full service route that includes ADA service. So those items are scheduled to be implemented. You know, as far as the public process goes, if all of those are approved, they'll be scheduled to be implemented on Sunday, September 26th. We're also going to the public this fall for a new service that will start, you know, probably around Memorial Day next year or earlier, or maybe at the end of April. And this is a new downtown shuttle. This will be a high frequency service that operates in the downtown area from Cashleputer in the north, kind of where the new CC Robeson Arena is going. It will then go south on Tejon. Will serve the new Olympic Museum and the Switchback Stadium and all of the new redevelopment that's occurring south of Cimarron Street in the south part of downtown. So it will have really wide service spans. It will operate probably from 7 a.m. in the morning until 10 p.m. Saturday morning and Sunday morning, it will operate until 2 a.m. So this is something, you know, we're all very excited about. This could be a great service that could really help alleviate some of the congestion issues in downtown and help relieve some of the parking issues.
Oh, hi, Cody, how are you?
The concept is
Too
to
bad.
direct people to park their vehicles in many of the parking facilities downtown and allow them to take the shuttle, you know, to wherever they need to go. If they need to go to a restaurant before a show or a game, they can get on the shuttle with 7 to 10 minute frequency and get to wherever they need in the downtown area. So we're pretty excited about that. And when we finalize the proposal brochure and get all of the public materials ready, we will make sure to send that to Rick and Jessica to send out to all of you. But yeah, look for that probably the third week of June 21st. That's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Dave, you had your hand up.
I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. Brian, good job on the overview and great work bringing the system back back to life. I know it's been a difficult run for everyone for the last year or so. So good on you, and please do congratulate and thank everyone there for their hard work and dedication. A question I had for you was about the Colorado Springs Airport service, and again, congrats. That's been on again, off again, and just thinking, you know, in terms of interregional transportation, I know that this Springs Airport service, as I said, has been on again, off again over the years. And at one time, there was a clunky but possible connection between the two airports, between the Denver International Airport and here. Are you folks coordinating your system, the headways, the schedules, any of that with the either Mustang and or the new light rail service, which, as you know, goes into Lincoln now, or goes south of Lincoln into Ridgegate Parkway, and then does a 2-seat ride to DIA. I guess my question is, with Southwest now serving the airport and payments are skyrocketing, it's not impossible for those of us who are traveling again a little bit to think that we miss a connection in either direction and could take a public transit option between or to or from the airport. So you miss a connection to the Springs in Denver, can you take the bus home, I guess is my question, to get your car.
Mm-hmm. Well, that can certainly be done, but you know, this new service that we're starting actually June 13th is designed to be more of a workforce service to provide trips from our Academy Hancock Superstop area to the Amazon facilities and to the airport. So it's primarily designed, I mean, it's only going to operate probably 7 round trips a day. And it's primarily focused on Amazon shift changes. So that's the service as it will start initially on June 13th. You know, with the added RTA dollars, we're going to be converting this to more of a full service route. So it will operate just like the rest of our system does from, you know, approximately 6:30 in the morning until in the evening and then on the weekend. So that's where there will be an opportunity for more people, perhaps even travelers or visitors to the Colorado Springs Airport to be able to use it. Now, as far as, you know, coordination or connections to RTD and light rail and Mustang, it's not really coordinated that well, but it's going to operate on 30-minute headways. So, if somebody wants to go from DIA to Union Station and or take Mustang down here, they will be able to do that, but they're going to have to tie into our system at the Academy Hancock Transfer Station. We are, as part of our 2022 City General Fund budget request, we are going to be requesting a new Airport Express service, which is going to be more designed toward visitor travel. It will go, directly from the Colorado Springs Airport to downtown Colorado Springs. So if funded in next year's budget, that is something that would be more geared toward visitors to the Colorado Springs Airport.
No, that's fine, Brian. Yeah, my only reason for asking it was yesterday I was at the RTD's 9 Mile station. That's at 225 and Parker Road. And there are 2 backpackers there going to Denver Airport, and they were growling that there are no rental cars available with the pandemic. And they were kind of stranded either through the Springs Airport, and they couldn't get to there from the 9 Mile station. So they instead went to DIA to get a rental car that doesn't exist. So just a little dot in the curve. That's 2 backpackers yesterday trying to get to the Springs Airport through mass transit. Thought, they were unable to do it. I just wondered if in fact that was just an anomaly, or if it's due to, as I suspected, a lack of resources and coordination between the systems. So just want to encourage you to keep your eye on that ball possibly, and look at kind of that big picture if and when the resources permit.
Richard, you had a question? Thank you, Dave.
Brian, I commend you on a very fine report. I've got several questions, a couple of comments, and probably a recommendation at the end. But I'd like to make something clear so no one thinks that I'm anti-transit. When I was with the Appalachian Commission in charge of transportation, we instituted rural mass transportation opportunities throughout the Appalachian region. And then at Federal Highways, when I was there for 8 years, I was the one that was the coordinator with Urban Mass Transit Administration. And I believe in mass transit as if we're talking about buses, which we are. And I really do think that you're doing a marvelous job. One of my questions was, I have not seen, since I have been on the CAC here, anything showing how the relationship as to the cost of operations and improvements go between the amount of revenue you get from your passengers and the total revenue cost of the operations. And I've always felt that's a good indicator of how we're doing, how it can be improved, etc. It is not meant to be a negative question. What would you say is the approximate, and only approximate, relationship there?
Well, I'm not sure if you were on this committee last fall, but every fall during the budget preparation process, we always present our upcoming budget to the RTA, CAC, and the board. So there we show all of our revenues and our expenditures, and there's a lot of good data there for how we're performing. Right now, coming out of the pandemic, one of the metrics that we use is fare recovery, and a lot of people think that or always ask the question, why doesn't public transit pay for itself? Well, I could answer a really long explanation, but basically fare recovery is the costs and compared to the revenue that you're bringing in. So system-wide, prior to the pandemic, I believe we were probably in the low 20% fare recovery ratio. We have dipped quite a bit because of the pandemic, but you know, that is kind of not untypical for a lot of transit agencies throughout the nation to have a fare recovery ratio that's in that range.
I would tell you that in my limited experience looking at that sort of issue, mass transit, it will never pay for itself by the fares, and it should never be expected to. And I don't expect it to. And I still say we need what you are doing very badly, and you're doing a good job at it. And I have no criticism to make of it. It's just something that it's important, I think, to understand. And I'd say whenever one is starting up if you were starting up a new mass transit operation, one of the questions that should be answered up front and always presented is that, hey, this is a valued service that needs to be funded, and do not expect the ridership to pay for it, because it can't, it won't. That's a fact. But my recommendation would be, I don't know if my fellow members would want to see it or not, but I think it would be helpful, is to see some sort of chart showing the progress, the decrease, and in the share, what the fares are bringing in versus the cost. I would love to see that every month. And I'm apologize for a failure of memory because I'm sure you're correct that it was presented last fall and probably the fall before that. And I've been on here a couple of years, but thank you very much. I appreciate your presentation and what you're doing.
No, thank you. Thank you very much for those comments. And yeah, I think that is probably something that we could somehow fit into this report, and it would be good information, and it is readily available. So yeah, I'll talk with our staff, and we'll see what we can do to have that be a part of this report from here on out. And I appreciate your comments too about the fare recovery ratio. And we do like to make this point as often as we can, and sometimes we are forgotten in this way, but we do view ourselves as being a vital piece of city infrastructure, just as we have roadways and bridges and wastewater and stormwater and freshwater and all of that. Public transportation is a vital piece of any city's infrastructure. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, can
Carlos?
Yeah, just a remark. Appreciate those comments there about the fare recovery and so forth. I just want to point everybody out, this is just a FYI, but on our financial reports, there is a line item there for our public transportation fare and other revenue. To date, right now, it's $856,000. Thank you.
Any other questions for Brian in transit? Thank you, Brian. Have a nice afternoon. Unless you just want to sit down and listen to all the matrix discussion.
No, I'm good for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, item number 7B, PPRTA 3 matrix. So what I would like to do with this is I've been through the remaining items. We finished items 1 and 2 last time. I've been through the list of remaining items. Some of them I don't think are going to be very controversial. Some will be more controversial and carry more discussion than others. So using my prerogative, I'd like to reorder some of these and get some of the easy, what I consider easier ones out of the way first, and then get into discussions so that we can at least make some progress towards moving down this list versus us tying ourselves up for a whole lot and only get one or two done. So I will like to propose the order, and we'll just go down them and decide and discuss at that point. If, as long as someone has any serious objections to that, then that's what I'd like to do. So let's start with item number 7 on this list. It has to do with what year we go to the ballot. I think that we all agreed, and I think the board kind of agreed to this, that 2022 was the year that we need to do this for timing and whatnot. Am I remembering that in my notes correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so number 7 is done. Number 8, which is when could a prospective new member entity join the RTA? There has been some discussion about this. Rick, you were going to say something? Oh, to start off the discussion, I'd like to suggest we go with the staff recommendation on that one. But when would people join in the RTA? I believe the existing language is that's covered in another one. If they join other than the election year, they only get maintenance funds. They don't get capital, which is another one of our topics. But when people join was the discussion. So I'll open it up to the floor. Rick?
I think this is more of an information item from PPRTA attorney Jennifer Ivey. So it's information, general information for everybody, including prospective new member government. So I'm not sure that this needs much discussion.
That was the way I kind of felt too. I felt like that the lawyer has kind of said this is when we need to do it. So, Reb?
If you need a motion to put this, if you need a motion to put this to the board, I suggest that we go with what's recommended, basically the months as what, and basically because it is an attorney thing. It's nothing.
And April has already passed, so we're down to just 2 options.
April and November of 21 and April of 22 are the only 2. So is there any hardcore discussion on any of that?
Jim, this is Gene Bray. I've got a question.
Go ahead, Gene.
The text in 8A says that there are concerns, issues, possible legal questions if the election for a new member occurs at the same time the PPRTA is approved. And if I'm reading this correctly, that's one of the things that's being recommended, is that we can have somebody join at the same time that we vote on the PPRTA.
That's correct. These 3 dates were offered by the attorney, and the narrative is by the attorney, and her concern was that we not have a new member join with their election in November of 22 at the same time as we go to the ballot in November of 22. So that's why she did not mention it as an option. Legally, it is an option, but Jennifer Ivey is concerned how the wording of a new member's ballot and the wording of our ballot would say, voters, please approve us, and also the list of prospective new member X. And then new member X also has their separate ballot. It just might get confusing. So Jennifer Ivey is not recommending, even though it's mentioned in the narrative, Jennifer Ivey did not offer that as an option that she is recommending.
So we're recommending that the election be held on November 2022. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. Can I add in there, Rick, the scale steward of it? So she's not recommending, and nor is the county or the city recommending that we have new members join in November of 22. We would only recommend in November of 21 or April of 22. And not only are there the legal issues that Rick was mentioned from Jennifer Ivy, it would just be cleaner from my planning standpoint, in particular if they want to be considered for capital funds, if they were involved in the planning process before the November 22 ballot.
So I think the boiled down recommendation here is, since April of 21 has already passed, that's not an option. We're down to the two, November of 21 or April of 22. It would be the two that the attorney Jennifer Ivy is recommending, since she's not recommending November of 22 for a new member to go to their voters simultaneous on the same ballot as PPRTA is going to the ballot.
Right. Tom, Vierta?
I was going to just say, I think we should just come down with a strong recommendation saying, do not hold their election on the same day, because it creates too much ambiguity when we put the ballot issue out. The percentages is this, unless these people join, then it'll be this. And that's a greater opportunity to have it shot down.
Right, and I think that was kind of the point of Gail's comment, was to get it done in these two. And so I'll propose November 21, April 22 as a staff recommendation, as what we present to the board.
Second.
Any other discussion from anybody on Zoom? Dave?
Jean Bray, just one comment along with your November 21 and April 22, include that the new RTA be November 22.
I think that's already been kind of decided, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dave?
Yeah, thank you. I have no problem at all with the 21-22 issue. The question I have really is about the definition of the member entity. Just to be clear, and I don't know, Gail, if this goes in your direction or to our legal counsel, but cities and counties obviously are eligible to join within El Paso County. And then depending which side of the Title 32 Metro District fence you may be on, whether you like them or not, the largest Metro District in Colorado is now easily Highlands Ranch. It's over 100,000 population. Pueblo West, I think, is approaching 100,000 population. We've got several large ones here in El Paso County. And I just want to make sure that there's a member entity, would be a city, certainly, county, obviously, and a Title 32 Metro District as an entity, which would be eligible as a standalone to join. Like a Highlands Ranch, a Pueblo West, or any one of the number of larger ones we have here in El Paso County. If the city didn't want to be part of it, but a Metro District did, then they could join as a Metro District entity, since they're a governmental entity.
Yeah, but I think they would have to be in the road and street business, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it may be a district, but not doing the maintenance in some cases, right?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, one very excellent example is when you go up I-25, everything from Baptist Road to actually, I think a little past 105 east of I-25, there's a 10, maybe 20,000 population segment of the county in the town of Monument, where the district provides 100% of the road service. The town of Monument provides nothing to the people in that Metro District, but the Metro District does exactly provide all the maintenance, snow plowing, paving, you name it, that Metro District does all of it. And they would be one excellent example. 20,000 people who are ineligible, even though the Metro District provides services that the town doesn't.
Okay, thank you, Dave. All right, I'd like to go to number 9, Front Range Rail. Oh, I'm sorry, we probably do need a vote. Yes, I'm sorry, we have a motion.
You had a motion and a second.
And a second. My bad, thanks, Gail. So all those in favor of making a recommendation to the board that that we consider November of 21 and April of 22 as the opportunities for other members to join.
Aye.
Aye.
All those in favor say aye, sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay,
And if I
all
may,
right.
just to clarify, the Title 32 district was affirmative in the answer. Is that correct?
I don't know the difference. Rick,
That metro districts that are in the road business are eligible to join RTAs. It is a yes.
Okay, thank you. Just want to go on the record. Thanks so much, Rick.
okay, item number 9, Front Range Rail. Staff says no, I say no, we don't have enough clarity and this could break the bank. In my input.
I
John?
agree with you, Jim. This is Jane.
Yeah, Jim, I was just going to say, I concur. This is definitely something we don't want to see happen.
I think we should go through the process, so we didn't quite do it on the other one. So I will move forward that we accept these steps.
Second.
So we have a recommendation and a staff, a recommendation and an approval to accept the staff recommendation of not include Front Range Passenger Rail in RTA 3.
Second.
And Tom second, I think we had one. Carlos, you got a question?
No, I was ready to
Okay.
vote.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Say nay. Or nay. All right, very good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Item number 11.
On the last one, was there a name?
No, there was no nay that I heard. Item number 11, contiguity requirement. I'm not sure, is that like, it's just info? Okay, so there's no action there? Okay, no action on that, so we'll skip over 11. Number 12, who to approach. I think that's already been done. The staff, the board directed the staff to do that. And these are the listed here are the people that would be eligible. And they've either been contacted or are in the process of being contacted. So there's no action on item number 12.
Jim, Gene Bray,
Yes, sir.
do we need to add in those metro districts that we just discussed that are, I think you said Title 39?
To 32 and I'm gonna let Rick address that. I think the answer is no.
And I'd suggest no. The board last fall gave the staff direction to contact these 5, and we did. We did not get any direction to contact metro districts or any other eligible governmental entities or counties. So the staff is limited to the 5. We've contacted the 5, and of course Calhan is going through the process. We're waiting to hear back from Monument and Palmer Lake. Fountain said no, Woodland Park said no. So I don't suggest any additional CAC action on this.
I would have a question. Since PPACG includes Park County, have they been approached at all?
No,
Do you not want to?
it's whatever the board directed us to. So you're welcome to recommend to the board, but at this point, we just contacted the 5 that are in the matrix that the board directed.
And they specifically did not want to include Teller County, only the city of Woodland Park in that part of that direction.
Correct.
So, okay. So let's move to item number 13. And I'll open it up for discussion. Item number 13 talks about the board and CAC membership. Should other entities join? How does that change? What's the proportion? The current ratio is 3, 3, 1, and 1, 3 county, 3 city, and then 1 for each of the remaining member governments. That should another entity join, how does that ratio change, or should it change? And so that's the point here on this one. And it would, the same logic would apply to the CAC. Does the ratio stay the same? Do they get more than 1 vote? How does that work? I think the intent of the question, having listened to the board members talk about this, was that a member government like the city of Colorado Springs could be overruled by multiple small entities on something, and that's not something those directors want to happen. So, Rick.
Two options here that I'd suggest to the CAC. One is to leave this alone and not develop a recommendation. The other is to hypothesize that Calhan would join this fall in November, and that then we'd have a mix of 3, 3, 1, 1, 1, 1. So that would change the ratio. So then would the CAC want to jump in and say the 3, 3, 1, 1, 1, 1 should then be 4, 4, 1, 1, 1, 1. So in other words, does the CAC want to recommend a 4th director for the city and a 4th director for the county if Calhan joins, or do you want to leave this alone and let the board wrestle with it?
I don't get to share my personal opinion, but Richard.
I think that for 13A, we should increase the number of the of El Paso County and the city of Colorado Springs by 1, if such a thing occurs. And if we do that, then I think it's obvious we should do the same thing as far as the CAC is concerned. I would recommend both.
Okay, Joan, you have a comment?
Yeah, I
see you, Scott.
Since we don't have a recommendation for staff, I would like to see this just go to the board. And just trying to do a change if Calhan passes, or if this is probably not in the best interest, and the board should make a decision on it.
Okay. Scott, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I kind of echo what Joan said. It's more a political question, and it's best left to the politicians to decide.
I would concur with that. Somebody else had their hand up. Gene?
Yes, sir. I don't have an issue with if Callahan is the only new entity of increasing the board by 1 and leaving the current membership for El Paso and the city at 3-3. If that's what's done at the board level, I think we could do the same thing at the CAC level. But the bottom line is that this should really be addressed, in my opinion, in the ICG or the IGE intergovernmental agency agreement. And I think that the board better figure out how they want to do it. It's sort of a minefield for us in some respects.
Okay. Anybody else have their hand up that I don't see?
Hey, Jen, this is Ryan.
Just a comment. One of the remarks made by a fellow CAC member or members is the board should make the decision. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think there's very much we ever discuss here that we decide. It's the board makes all the decisions. And I think our job is to make recommendations. And I have no problem stepping into political things and making recommendations. no matter what it is. So, but I don't really care that much if you don't want to make a recommendation.
Okay, Reb, you had your hand up, and then Ryan.
I'm going to recommend that we can't. Turn it back.
Turn your microphone on, please, Reb.
Go ahead. Yeah, you're on.
I'm going to recommend that the CAC turn this back over to the board. It's a political decision, and we recognize it as such and have to deal with whatever they decide. The object of, we could sit here and say we should be 4-4 and the 3 entities. Well, it's not going to be 4-4-3. It's going to be 4-4-4, and that's then you get into the discussion that's already been brought up by Councilman Williams, that you're going to split votes and things like that. Let's not get into that. Just basically say it's a political issue. You guys decide. That's the board. And if anybody wants to point the finger, you're welcome to cross swords with your council people as well about this. So won't be the first time.
Ryan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I agree with what was shared earlier by Richard, I believe, of in the maintaining the existing ratio, should Callahan join, and increasing the city and county representation to 4. It just seems to me to be appropriate based on the sales tax generation by those two jurisdictions. So that was all. Thanks, Jim.
Okay, Gene, is your hand back up or still up?
No, it's not up.
Okay. All right, so let's move on then. Can I share this? Let's not take a formal vote, turn it back to the board for their decision. Would it be okay with the members of the CAC that if I just share our discussion, that the consensus was that this was a political decision made by the board and not a recommendation by the CAC? Does anybody have a problem with me doing that?
No, I think that's exactly what we should do.
Okay, all right, we'll move on. Thank you. Let's go back to number 3, if we would. This one has to do with the moving the B list projects to A, and how we should list the ballot language. For some of the newer members, the current rules are that all of the A list projects must be funded, not completed, but funded before we can work on any of the B list items. However, there have been some exceptions that are taken on an individual basis, no carte blanche, where there have been projects that have moved from the B list to the A list because of some circumstance. For instance, Platt Avenue Bridge over Sand Creek. One side was an A list, one side was a B. They got some federal funding and they moved it up because they're economies of scale of doing that same thing. The same thing with the Fontanero Bridge replacement. One of them was, one side was a B, one side was an A, economies of scale, and because of other things they needed to, Rick, am I wrong here?
The primarily, and again from memory, most of the moving from B to A was city moving a B to an A program fund. On the Fontanero, that the siding was moved, was the main bridge is A, the siding is a listed B, but the city requested and the CAC board agreed that the siding, a B list, could move up to the emergency bridge fund program fund. So most of the movement from B to A has been with the city and into the city's program funds.
Yeah, yes. And my point of this was it's not a written policy. It's done on an exception basis and stands on its own merit. when those decisions are addressed and things, whether regardless, and the city is the only one that's done it so far. So with that, I'll open it up to discussion.
Mr. Chair, I do.
Go
Just
ahead,
clarification.
Carlos.
Let me just make sure I understand what Mr. Sonnenberg had to say is that it sounds like they were able to be creative with moving an item that was on the B list and declare it an A because there is an A list category, which is the Emergency Bridge Fund. What about the scenario where we do have a project that could get like a matching grant from, somewhere, and there is no A list category that we can then declare as that category to hold that B list item? What do we do in that scenario? Maybe Mr. Sonnenberg has that answer to that, or Gail has an answer. I'm sorry. Thank you. Or I should say, I'll turn it over to the chair. Thank you.
Excuse me. Doesn't point B address that?
Yeah, it could. Just get some clarification then, it's just my understanding.
Okay.
So Gail Sturdivant, City of Colorado Springs. I want to make sure, I want to answer your question for what's going on with the current PPRTA authorization. And then I want to make sure that we're talking about what could happen in the future, because those are two different things. So on the today as it exists, Carlos, the only way we can leverage PPRTA money to get other grants is if they have an A-list nexus, so an A-list project. So for example, you should all remember that the city applied for an infra grant for the South Academy project from the Milton Proby Parkway up to Fountain. We're able to use that A-list money as a grant match, and we have to show that commitment when we apply for those grants. It's not just that we can go and ask for this money, we actually have to show that we have some match for it. On the Font Narrow bridges that Rick mentioned, yes, the design has been proceeding with the emergency bridge funds. We've been working on the budget to make sure that capital dollars or A-list dollars are going to be there to do the construction of the siding bridge. However, recognizing that isn't most desirable, we're actually using the A-list Font Narrow project to leverage or submit for a raise grant and ask for money that way. But in all those cases, you really, whether, as Rick mentioned, we're either using a program fund to help, usually in an emergency situation, or in this case, in like Font Narrow, for example, the siding bridge has to be constructed at the same time. It's not that it's something that's economy of scale. We actually have to provide a rail bypass during construction of the mainline bridge. So there's a direct nexus to that project. The Platte project that Rick mentioned, we were able to leverage the existing PPRTA funding for the A-list or the eastbound bridge. And we were able to go to PPACG and put a project, compete for project funds through the TIP process and able to companion those up. And so that's how we were able to match those. So you have to have PPRTA money or have some funding source to get those grants. Now, that's maybe more about what's happened in the past. I think really what we need to be talking about is what we'd like to do in the future. And if you recall the discussion we had in May, there were some questions. In fact, I could slide that up. There were some questions about whether or not we should have some grant match funds. There was a couple different items in the city and county. All of the staff recommendation was that we come up with a state and federal discretionary grant match program. And that would be an opportunity in the future for things that may not necessarily be in the A or B list on how PPRTA could authorize the member government to go and compete for those grants. On item 3 here, we're not recommending changing the ballot language. If the grant match was received, or if the grant funding was received, then the board would have to approve that grant match, that it could be done either as the A list or as a B list with the permission of the board moving forward. We were not recommending making this movement from an A to a B list if it was a developer contribution or some other funding source other than the discretionary grant, with the exception we made sure that we put the FEMA grant option in our description from a staff recommendation. Carlos said, and that was a lot of parts of that question. I hope I answered it all for you.
Let me add to that. If you remember in number 1, since the CAC approved last month positive recommendations for number 1 and number 2 on the list. Number 1 included the state or federal discretionary grant match fund that Gail just mentioned. So that would be, that is mentioned in number 3. If grant funding is received, then the board can budget the matching funds to the state or federal discretionary grant match program fund. So a B-list project could be funded out of the A-list state or federal discretionary grant match program fund. Yes.
But if you recall, staff's recommendation is that, 1, we would recommend a supermajority vote. 1, and 2, that the member government came and got permission in advance of applying for that grant so that they know that funding would be in place, that they wouldn't just be assuming that PPRTA would be covering the grant match portion.
So that's the one condition in addition to what we're doing now, where a B list could move to an A. It actually wouldn't move to an A, but it'd be funded out of an A, out of the new A state or federal discretionary grant match program fund.
Well, it's not necessarily
The
moving to an A,
match.
but you're just reaching into the B list and funding it. And you're cutting an exception to the rule of everything on A list must be funded first. So you're not actually moving it, but you're just going to reach down into that bucket and fund it, right?
I think that the discussion was, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, that it would actually become a child project underneath that program. So that's how it would be incorporated into the A list.
So you would put the money in the project matching grant fund or whatever, and then fund the B through that.
Maybe not exactly. Let's just say that grant match fund, it had account number 1,000, correct? And you were able to get one of these discretionary grants, again, with the permission of the board, and it was for project Z. Well, that account number could be 1000A or 1001, something like that, that shows it a child that rolls up underneath that program, some kind of item like that.
So I guess the more detailed process would be if a member entity saw the opportunity for a grant and they needed to, well, let's say it's a $5 million project and they needed to come up with a match of say $1 million. And this is a B-list project, or let's see, then they could ask for board approval and supermajority. They would ask for, they would have to show where they have the match out of their capital share somewhere. That might necessitate a line item transfer. That might be a temporary line item transfer. They move the $1 million from project A into this one. If they don't get the grant, then they come back to the line item transfer and move the $1 million back. But then they can show when they put in the grant application that they have the funding for the match.
Got it. Okay, now let me propose another scenario. Let's say that you were going to redo a bridge or something and you had it listed in a B list as a project. And a hurricane or a tornado comes through and rips out that bridge, and you've got to now do that. And there's an opportunity for FEMA funding as a portion of that replacement. Same scenario, you would have to again apply the grant match money, move it into that project, and you could get that bridge done ahead of when you planned on doing it. Is
That could definitely be a path that would fit in the description that we've laid out that program.
okay, that makes sense to me, that you got to replace it. We did that with at Cimarron Bridge years ago. Right. Yeah, we moved it up and did it because it just made sense. It needed to be, it was falling apart and hitting railroad track. So, okay. Any further discussion?
So Carlos, did we answer your questions?
Yeah, yeah, actually, well, I had to do with in the absence of an A item there. It sounds like if we do have this other discretionary budget for matching grants, it would be covered with that. I was just looking at the scenario. We did have it come up before and I have missed a few of the meetings, so I apologize for that. So apologize if I'm missing something here, but it was the Dublin Boulevard extension. That's a B list item, looking at the list, the ballot language. And that was the Dublin Boulevard extension, Peterson Road to Mark Shuffle. I know that we've actually been putting some money on intersection improvements there just because of the rapid growth that's occurred there. We've had this need to accelerate that B list item and work on things now. So I'm just looking at, can we with this proposal here, be able to address that without having to resort to some sort of creativity with our budgeting?
So in that particular scenario, I think it would not really fall in line with what we'd be recommending. I mean, you are right, there is intersections improvements going on today at Dublin and Peterson, and it's really more from a safety capacity standpoint. But if you've been out in that area, you know there's a very significant gap from Peterson to Mark Shuffle that right now that stretch is on the B list, and we don't really have a mechanism to pull that particular project in. And unfortunately, if you go and look at it for some of these grants, it doesn't really actually score very well to go and get some of those discretionary funding as well. Not to say that we haven't looked for opportunities to fund that project.
Reb?
We've had this discussion quite a bit, and literally, we've just had.
Can't hear Reb.
Move your mic closer. There you go.
All right.
Yes.
And you all might fine. We've had this discussion quite a bit. We've just received notification of $1+ trillion going into infrastructure. And it looks to me like, as the city did, and I think very successfully, thanks to someone turning things around and get a better education about what the program funds do. I think you're going to see some tremendous challenges coming up, because literally even the people that pass the stupid bills don't know what it says or how to implement it. You're going to get hit with stuff that you can't even imagine right now. That's my opinion. And I know Jennifer's got experience writing grants. I have no idea what you're facing. Good luck, young lady. Thank you for your service thus far. And I'm serious about that. So maybe we ought to just start figuring out now a fund that the experts, Gail and Jennifer, okay, this is how we're going to fund it. I don't know how you, but I think that's something to be considered, and let them figure out a way to fund a, if you call it a slush fund, I don't know, I'll get spotted, but a planned program fund for funding the unexpected. And Jim talks about a natural thing. I don't consider it natural what they did, so.
Ryan, you got your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I wanted to state my support for staff recommendation here, and kind of echo what's been said before about the state and federal discretionary grant matching funds program, and basically over the course of the life of the measure program, there's going to be different funding opportunities that come around. And I know the city has an item they're bringing forward later today. But those grant programs change with each presidential administration or governor's administration. And I think it's important that the local agencies have the flexibility to bring forward projects, whether an A or a B, that are a fit for those programs. Because, what's a priority for us in as a A-list project, as Gail said, may not be a good match for one of these discretionary grant programs. And then lastly, I was thinking last week, or last month, after we discussed the FEMA match funds, are providing a match for FEMA funds. And I thought of, just how important that is to the rural towns and members. Because in my professional life, I'm helping a community in California, and I think the news probably hit here too, of the town of Paradise there that was basically had a severe loss of life and was decimated by a wildfire. And while they did get a disaster recovery funds from FHWA and FEMA, those require a 25% match, which is a very heavy burden on a small jurisdiction. And so if, these member agencies, should something very unfortunate happen to them like that, I think us as the PPRTA could, provide that support and match to get their infrastructure rebuilt. It would be really very important to that community. And that was it, Jim. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other hands raised. Anybody that I don't see got their hand raised? Thank you all for your comments. So what I'm hearing is that we have a mechanism in place, and that is if we go with that fund, grant matching fund, and then each one stands on their own with a board approval to move into that and use that as matching fund. I'm getting head nods here in the room.
Yes, it would have a zero budget, and if any of the member governments saw the opportunity for grant match, they'd have to propose from their capital funds where they want to line item transfer into that.
Okay, what we haven't decided is the thing on super majority vote or anything. The recommendation was not to make a percentage and not to have a super majority. I don't know that a super majority is needed, but
Staff actually recommended a supermajority for that grant match program if it was on the B list or a non-A or B listed project. So some of these questions kind of got convoluted between what was item 1 and now we've gone down to 3.
yes.
So you kind of need to look at them more holistically. So ultimately, we would be recommending that there was supermajority be considered.
And that was the CAC had a positive recommendation for that in number 1. So for number 3, you're just talking about the moving a B to an A,
Okay.
or funding a B from an A, and that's the staff recommendation that we just talked about. If grant funding is received, then the board can budget, blah, blah, blah.
Okay,
And I have highlighted that paragraph from that first recommendation, Jim, if you want to see it on the screen.
okay. Yes, I do. I looked on my notes. I got it highlighted here, so I just didn't look back. Sorry.
Jim,
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
I know the answer to my question. But earlier, Carlos recused himself because he had a conflict of interest on one of the items. Excuse me. Every one of these where there's a request to do something, the board members never recuse themselves on anything, even though they've obviously got conflicts of interest. They vote for themselves to get something. I know the answer to the question, yeah. But it just seems inconsistent.
That's been discussed with the PPRTA board attorney, and she says that the state law that has elected officials from member governments on a regional body, they can make a motion to approve
Their own.
contracts for their own member entity. So with no disrespect intended, according to her, asked and answered.
Yeah, no, I understand that. It's like going into the voting booth. They always vote for themselves. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Why wouldn't you? Okay,
Jim,
yes, sir.
I want to make sure I didn't get lost on this major majority. We are going to stay with a major majority on this issue.
You mean just a regular majority, not a super majority, right, Rick?
No, if we're getting out of the normal stream of things, I think once we start moving projects and money from one level to another, I think a super majority ought to be considered.
And I mean, we did that in question 1, right, Gail?
We did answer that in question 1, and the CAC recommended staff to follow staff's recommendation in the May CAC.
Okay, I thought we were reviewing it again on this
That was
issue
my
on
bad,
the
Rick.
three.
That was my bad, Rick.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Jim,
Rick,
I've got
I
a
mean,
motion.
Just 1 second, Gene. Reb's got a question.
what constitutes a supermajority or even a majority? Because right now, we have 9 board members. A supermajority is not just 6 board members. It takes 7.
We actually left that somewhat to the discretion of the board to define. We said 3/4, or I'm sorry, 2/3 or 3/4, and you're right, they would have to define that, and that would need to be put in either through the an IGA amendment or policy, whichever Jennifer Ivy would be recommending.
So that is defined now by the board, or they are going to define it? Is that?
It's our recommendation going to the board, and we haven't presented anything to the board yet.
Yeah, their choice of 2/3 or 3/4 is in the last 2 lines of the first page in number 1. So, and
They have not made that decision.
they've, yeah, so there's their option to pick.
Or will they understand that when I say this?
Now you're getting hypothetical.
Well, and can I tell you, Rob, some of this we actually left in the realm. It is more of a political decision. We were really deferring to the board to define what the supermajority meant, but we thought that a supermajority in these instances would be the right direction forward.
Okay. All right, very good. So just to reiterate, making sure that what we've already done was that the fund for the grant match is set up. An entity that wants to move a project up or add a project needs to, for matching funds, needs to put that money there so that it's guaranteed or it's shown to the grantee that money is available, and then the board makes the decision on the viability of the project or whatever.
That's correct. And we would be asking, in fact, we would need a letter from the board stating that the funding would be available through PPRTA to go along with our grant application. That is one of the requirements.
Okay. All right. So moving a project for, all right, so let's move on to item number 4.
Was there?
Oh, I'm sorry, we need to vote. We need to
I
vote.
think Ryan made a motion, I think a few minutes ago.
Ryan, did you make a motion to approve that?
Yes, I make a motion to approve the staff recommendation
Okay,
for item 3.
okay, for number 3. Do I have a second?
Second.
Joan as a second.
Just some discussion. Do I'd like to have that on.
Go
So where
ahead.
there's a motion and a second for what, 3F staff recommendation?
Yes.
The item there about the supermajority, I was actually with Mr. Hoover on this a little bit lost. It says B and C not recommended. So are we then not recommending? Should we just strike that then? The words not recommended, just take B and C out and just have this escalation clause in there and not refer to the supermajority?
I think that I would prefer for clarity that as we move forward to the board, that we take B and C out and just leave item A there, because we've already addressed the supermajority issue in item number 1. Did I state that correctly?
I think we can make that change and it will still be clear. Got to remember in this particular item 3, it got kind of convoluted because it was not really grant match. It was really about developer funds or other circumstances. And we wanted to make sure we were limiting this discussion, that we really didn't want to use PPRTA funds for those kinds of situations. We really addressed the grant opportunities more in question 1, and we were recommending a supermajority. In item 3, it maybe gets convoluted because we say the only opportunity we really want, we reiterate, I should say, that the only opportunity we want to use PPRT funding for is if we have a grant match opportunity, and that these other things that could come out there, through, like I said, a developer contribution, we do not want to address.
No, Mr. Chair, that was we have a motion and a second to recommend this staff recommendation, and it actually makes references to B and C. So it's just a kind of a technical thing here. If we're not talking about the supermajority, that we go ahead and strike the language in the motion. So I would make a subsidiary motion that we strike the language B and C not recommended.
Just take those words out, you mean?
Take those words. I make a motion for that. This is a subsidiary motion. Yes, take those words out, unless of course we want to go ahead and rephrase the motion, but the motion right now is that staff does not recommend this, and I'd like to take that language out.
Rick?
If I could clarify, and I reread the last paragraph of number 1 at the bottom of the first page. And if we're talking about the state or federal grant match fund, if the proposed grant project is not on the A list, but is included on the B list, then a majority vote is necessary. And then the next paragraph or the next sentence, if the proposed grant project is not on either the A or the B, then you need the supermajority. So if we then transition to number 3, and we're talking about moving a B to an A, I think that could be a simple majority. The supermajority language, Gail, help me out if I'm wrong, is just if the grant project is not on either the A or the B.
That is correct, Rick. And I think I misspoke earlier when we were discussing that, but that is correct, how you just characterized staff's recommendation that we discussed in May.
So then it would be okay to scratch the language in the staff recommendation for this one, for number 3?
Well, maybe just for a clarification, again, I'm just trying to understand what we're voting on here. 3F sounds like it's redundant with item 1. I'm wondering if 3F is even necessary to make a separate recommendation. It seems as though it's a subset or covered already in number 1. So I just want to make sure, what are we voting on here? Are we voting on the full language in 3F?
But item 1 doesn't cover the grant match.
It does not,
pot.
yes, not exactly.
The pot, right?
Mr. Chair, may I make a recommendation that staff modify their response to 3B and C to C response to item 1C?
Just reference 1C.
Yes.
Okay. Is that if we reference 1C, which is the paragraph, the language there, I think you're covering the grant match fund in this one, and you're just referring back to the recommendation in 1. I think that would clarify.
Yes, we just want to make sure we're staying consistent.
Right.
Yeah, that was really what I'm trying to say, because
Okay.
again, it says the word's not recommended. So I guess I would just, let me just withdraw my motion there and just say strike the words B and C not recommended and say, use the staff recommendation of 1C, is it?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, 1GC?
Yes.
Paragraphs 1GC.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Excuse me.
All right.
Sorry, Gail.
I'm a little lost on this here. I'm with Mr. Hoover on this.
We actually want to change. We actually would like to, and I can modify this as we're speaking, to leave B as not recommended, because that is when the other circumstances arrive, and we would change C to C response to item 1C above, if that's acceptable.
Okay.
Oh, I thought B was the circumstances. Okay, not recommended. So
Okay.
strike the word, keep B, right? B not recommended, and adopt language of 1GC, right?
So Carlos, you should be able to see it directly on the screen right now.
Oh, do you have it modified?
Yes.
I was looking at 1C. Is 1C, it's not the staff recommendations. There's 2 Cs on number 1. Look at number 1. If you go up,
Yeah.
scroll up to 1, there's
Oh,
2 Cs. There's 2 Cs. I just want to make sure we have the right.
GC, yeah,
There's
Right.
a GC and a C without a paragraph, subparagraph. We're talking about C or GC?
In this case, it would be GC, the way it's referred to from a staff recommendation.
And then I would use the same numbering that's used in 1GC, because there is a 1C. This is just for the record. I mean, I'm a stickler for details.
Yeah, I know. We'll get it. We'll get it. All right. Now, everybody okay with that?
It still says
Okay.
1C, 1GC.
All right.
Got it.
So we have a recommendation from Ryan. Ryan, you okay with that modification as discussed?
Yes.
Okay. We have a second from Joan. Is that correct, Joan?
Yes.
Okay, so we've had discussion. All those in favor of the recommendation on item 3, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Okay, in this discussion, I got to go back for clarity. If an item is not on A list or B list, how do we do it without getting voter approval?
Program fund, state and federal grant match program fund.
No. One says that it's a supermajority vote.
Correct.
And the legal on that was expenditure of capital funds for a project like that is okay on that. We're all, I mean, we're kind of doing that now with the program funds anyway, right?
Yes, Jennifer Ivy has reviewed this several times.
Okay, all right. Sorry for the distraction. Just old age. Okay, so item 4. This has to do with, well, 4A was kind of confusing for me, but moving from an A to the B list, this timing of this is what we're talking about, not a project from an A to B. It's the moving from the A list to the B list. I'll open up for discussion on that one. Right now, go ahead, Jennifer.
I just suggest maybe we might have the opportunity to present.
Okay,
recommendations.
that's fine. Gail?
Yes, yeah, I think in this case it will be, and I'm going to go through and read the question A and staff's response to 4A, and then go to 4B and then staff's response to that. So the question for 4A was, everything's out of perspective, I apologize. All entities must completely fund their A-list projects before an entity can move to either their B-list projects, as is the wording with the PPRTA 2 ballot. I apologize, I do have to read B. Revise this ballot wording to allow each entity to move to its B-list projects after they completely fund their A-list projects independent of other entities. If so, would the capital projects on the A-list need to be identified by member entities so the public could see how this would work? So staff's recommendation ultimately was not to revise the budget or the ballot language. If this was something that became important, that we would be recommending the ballot language be changed to remove or modify completely funded prior, sorry, and I can't read. You guys don't see, I have another screen that pops up and blocks this. I apologize. So the ballot says now completely funded prior to use of funding for B-list projects. So what we would recommend, if this was something the board wanted us to consider, is that we have a program fund called Engineering Advancement Program that could be added to the A-list. This program could be available for all member governments. And the intent of the program is that you could advance engineering for B-list projects as the budget is allocated and B-list projects are prioritized by the board. If the program is included on the A-list, there would be no initial budget, and future budget considerations would be anticipated in the last 5 years of the PPRTA authorization as B-list projects are prioritized in funding. And we sort of defined that, but it was received revenue and projected, or 80% of the planned budgeted allocation indicates A-list projects can be completed. This program could not impact the timing or the ability to complete A-list projects. So maybe to restate that and give you an example, that is you getting close to the end of your A-list construction as funding's identified, that you could start the engineering work on a B-list project, because as you are aware, sometimes that takes 2 to 3+ years, depending on the nature of the project. You could start advancing that. So when your A-list projects are funded or under construction, that there would be an opportunity to springboard directly into the B-list.
So we're eliminating where we're using excess admin fund to do engineering ahead of RTA 3. I mean,
Well,
that example.
That's not actually an apples to apples example. Again, this is a project it would be a project identified on the B list, but it would give the member government the opportunity to start the engineering on that. So its construction dollars were coming out in the later years of the program would be available. I will add that just to kind of follow up the response, that we would not recommend that member governments move independently to the B list. Advancement of B list, again, needs to be prioritized as a board. We want to make sure that this was an opportunity that the board wanted to follow through on, that it would have to be based on the board's prioritization of what is on the B list that would still be put forth to the voters. So that is an alternate solution to the question that was presented to staff by the board. Staff's primary recommendation is not to change the ballot language. This is a lot of discussion about an alternative that we've developed that could potentially work if that's the direction we were given.
Okay, Richard?
I find my simple position is I think we should go to 4B, adopt that. And I would just as soon forget that other language recommended by staff and deal with the two issues in front of us. And my reasoning for supporting 4B, leaving the staff language alone, is that I don't want to, as a representative of El Paso County, I don't want to see either the projects for El Paso County or for the city or for a small jurisdiction to be held up because of a failure of another jurisdiction to be that far along. It's just, I mean, we are look, I ran as I was talking with Rick, I ran what is the Metropolitan Council of Governments here for Richmond, Virginia. I was on the Appalachian Regional Commission, which had 13, one state, West Virginia, and 12 others. And that was never language in the Appalachian Commission, or of course, the Regional Planning Commission really didn't have that money, but we had quite a bit of money in the Appalachian Commission. And I just abhor the thought of, and I just don't like that, I guess the existing language that is in the, is the existing language, is it not, Rick? In the present law.
Yes, 4A in the black print. Yeah, all entities must completely fund their A-list project before any can move to the B.
And I'm amazed that was put in there. And I really think it was a bad decision. And I think the city and the county and every other member government should have more flexibility in this area, and 4B would do that. Thank you.
So 4B in not the staff recommendation, but in the black print, revise it to allow independent.
Gene Bray.
Go ahead, Gene.
Well, I agree with the previous comments pretty much wholeheartedly, so I'm not going to repeat all of that. But bottom line is that if a member government has a small priority A list, let's use Rama as an example, and they have one or two smaller projects that are B list, they ought to be able to move to them once they've have completed their A-list project. It makes no sense to keep them and tie up money that they have to spend. And what do we do with it eventually when they can't spend all the money that they've contributed or are entitled to get? I'll put it that way. I think that we ought to allow the member governments individually, if they complete their A list, they're fully funded. They're whatever the proper legal wording is for having them to the point where they can move to the B list. They should be able to do so if they have funds available. And with that, I'll be quiet because the rest of it's just repeating what's already been said, which I already did, which I didn't want to.
I'll start. Mr. Chair.
Jennifer?
Mr. Chair, just to kind of give a sense of part of the discussion that we had as jurisdictions, we don't want to hold up any other jurisdictions from getting their projects done. And I think, in fact, you know, in some cases, we as the larger entity governments have really supported to make sure that the smaller entity governments are able to get their projects done and usually try to advance those as quickly as possible so that they're showing that they're, you know, accomplishing some of those tasks. But I think what we always have to remember here, and this was part of the discussion that we had, is that we as member governments are part of this regional program, and it is a regional program. And realistically, I don't care who gets their projects done first. I want to get my projects done as quickly as possible. And I think the bottom line is that we as member governments have to work together to make sure all the A-list projects get done. And I think that that's what's really important. We've been able to say promises made, promises kept on this program. And I think that that's still the intent here. And I think that we're not, as the big governments, not trying to hold anybody up. But what we want to make sure is that, you know, from an overall standpoint, is that we are getting all the projects done and funded.
Yeah.
I don't know if Gail wants to add in.
I'll just, I completely agree with Jennifer on this case, and I appreciate the ideas and thoughts. We've had to have more flexibility with the member governments, and we've tried to build flexibility in with a couple other things that we've discussed, for example, the grant match program we discussed previously. But we agree that, you know, the formation of this, that the RTA was for a regional support of projects. And I think it's very important, if you go back and look at when the RTA first formed as well, that I think that was some important language, that there was a commitment for that A-list being completed first, and that it was prioritization. We were telling the public what we were going to do, and now we're showing them that we're completing that work. I think we want to be true to that original language as much as possible.
I would like to say something. This is Beverly, and I'm sorry I'm not down there with you right now, but it got too cold down there for me. But, you know, with RAMA, the El Paso County gave them more money up front so that they could get that project done faster. And then now they're getting paid back a little bit with the allocation. So that's an example of really regionalism, and with El Paso County forwarding the money to RAMA and doing their project for them. So the bigger governments aren't stopping the little governments from moving forward, is my point.
Right. Carlos?
Well, I was going to introduce Jennifer Irving here. It was exactly this argument, I think it was a year ago, about this, the regional approach. And I think she expressed it very diplomatically. At the risk of being not so diplomatic here, I think the concern that I heard, okay, and I'm going to just try to characterize this, is that if we were to, like, let's say, take a B list item and fund it like an A list item, and then now a member government says, okay, now I have this A list item, that A list item is now blocked for lack of funding, because a B list item now has higher priority. And I think that was the concern that I heard from Jennifer. Okay, she said it very diplomatically about regional approaches and stuff. I appreciate the diplomatic language there, but I think your concern really is that we get a B list item that now has, in computer science, we call this priority inversion, where a lower priority project gets higher priority and starves a higher priority project because somehow it fell to the bottom of the queue. And so we're just trying to avoid that. And I think what I heard is, I just want to make sure we're clear on this, is that we're just going to use that to the judgment of the CAC and board going forward to make sure that that priority inversion does not occur. Would that be a kind of a way to express that? Or do we still have a problem here with lower priority projects getting higher priority funding?
I don't think we have a problem with lower priority projects getting funded ahead of higher priority. I think that the examples that I remember over time have all been circumstantial. They've stood on their own and have been considered individually, and that no one has been held up so far that I'm aware because they didn't have funding or something for their project. They only had 5 projects. I mean, how many projects, like somebody said, how many projects can Rayma really have? And so they get theirs done. They get them done in a timely manner. And I'm not aware of anybody being held up. I think it's incumbent upon those communities to develop a list that is sufficient enough based on revenue forecasts to get done what they need to get done. Green Mountain Falls is not going to have the same list of projects that Manitou does or something like that. So I think it's incumbent upon them to make sure that all of their priority projects are listed on are listed on the A, and then their nice to haves or things they'd like to get done are on the B. And I think that was the intent. But I'm not aware that we've had an inversion issue that I'm Rick shaking his head no, but I don't think we've had that inversion issue, and that's what the language is supposed to protect, is the way I understand it.
Jim, Murray,
Go ahead, Gene.
I agree with your comment right there. There's never been an inversion issue with regard to this. I don't believe we've ever completed a complete A list in the duration of any PPRTA yet. All we're allowing, all this does is allow a member that has completed A list to move to B list. And we're not stealing money from any other government entity in order to do that. No matter who the entity is, they still have a fixed amount of money that's allocated to them coming out of the tax based on population, if I understand things correctly. So it's not a matter of robbing Peter to pay Paul and funding a lower priority at the expense of someone else's A.
Do you want me to address that, Rick? Can I just point out that when we have the initial allocation of the funding based on the census, that is actually a planning number that we use throughout as much as we can throughout the life of the authorization. The commitment to the voters is to complete the A-list priority, which is the prioritization that's been done by the voters. And the commitment in the ballot language, as it's been presented for the last 2 times, is that we would complete everything on the A-list before we move to the B-list. So it's not necessarily directly itemized by the individual member government.
Yeah, good comment. Carlos?
Again, being very diplomatic here, it looks like I have to agree with Gene and Bob here about recommending 4B, that's the best way to go, but it sounds as though staff does not recommend 4B. Do I understand it correctly? 4B is not your recommendation. But it sounds like
correct.
Your recommendation is we go with 4B. So just wanted to clarify where the disconnect is. Thank you.
Can I point out that if you do decide to vote on 4B, I think it would behoove the CAC to come up with a recommendation for a ballot language change or know that that's the direction you would have to go.
And I think in brief terminology, it's either aggregate of all 5 or 6 member entities in the aggregate have to complete A to the B, or independent, aggregate or independent as far as movement from A to B.
Okay. So I'm in the interest of time, I don't want to keep repeating something if someone's still got an opinion that hadn't been stated. So we have a couple people that that feel like that this should be independent, which would require a ballot language changing or change the ballot language. And then the other one is maintain the language. And the recommendation is create a engineering advancement program that would be used within the last 4 or 5 years of the RTA to advance the engineering and design of projects on the B list prior to going to the B list. Did I summarize that?
That is correct, but please note, and I want to make sure that I understood what you said as well, that our recommendation is not necessarily have that program, but if we are asked to come up with a way to transition more smoothly to the B list, that is our alternate recommendation.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. That is a way to transition to the B without having a lull in the construction effort. Okay. Okay, so do I hear a recommendation, I'll entertain a recommendation on item 4 on the transition from the A to B list.
Jim, Jean Bray, a motion.
I move the adoption of item B. Period.
Which is the independent movement.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, I guess, well, I made the motion, no need to add to it.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to make the movement independent by independent agencies, not as a group.
Second, Jean Bray.
We have a motion and a second. I'm going to take Tom, Jean. So a motion and a second. All those in favor of item B, which would be an independent, allowing independent companies, vote by saying aye.
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 All those not in favor of independent, say nay. Nay.
Yay.
So we have Scott, I saw Scott's name fire up. Reb and I are all against that. Any other nays?
So yeah, we have 13. So if we can just count the nays, that might be the shorter sub list.
Yeah, so it looks like we've got 3 nays. Scott, did I read you correctly?
Yeah, I'm a nay.
Okay,
Yeah,
So-
this is Ryan. I'm a nay.
okay. So 4 nays so far.
I'm
Larry?
counting 5 nays. Let's get the names on the nays.
Okay, so it was Ryan, Scott, myself, Reb, and who else? Larry, you didn't go, you were independent?
I voted approval for it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so then we're back up to 9 to 4.
Okay, 9 and 4. Okay. So that's the recommendation on 4, I guess. Do we need to do a recommendation on A as well, or because we've chosen B over A, right?
So just to be clear, so ballot language would need to be changed as far as allocations go too, because right now we can allocate however much the board wants to allocate to the member governments for capital. We're just doing it administratively by percentages of population. So for instance, if one of the member governments doesn't have enough money based on their decennial census percentage, which it would have to be done that way with this scenario, we have always in the past, as the CAC and the board, given them more allocations. So you could have a member government not finishing their A while other member governments go to their B because they didn't have enough of an allocation.
I don't see how that can occur since they have to complete their A list before they can move to their B.
No, it occurs because other member governments move on to their B list, and these, say it's a smaller member government, never had enough revenue allocation to do their A list.
Well, the not doing it is not what this program is about. So.
Well, it's one of those things. Right now in the ballot measure, the maintenance funds are allocated by the decennial census. And the ballot measure is silent when it comes to capital because we all have to move forward to the B list in unison. So
Maintenance-
say one of the entities doesn't have enough for their A list because this is regional, we allocate it through the board and the CAC during the budget process so that they can finish their A list, say, because nobody can go to the B list without finishing the total A list or funding the total A list. It's not really finishing it, but it's kind of like, it's creating an issue where some of the smaller member governments may not be able to finish their A list while, and it might not just be the smaller ones, any of them, while another member government goes onto the B list. And that's really kind of speaking to what Jennifer was saying.
Well, the recommendation has been voted on, voted on.
I'm
and
just saying, and it was too late to throw that in there, but it's something that the board will have to consider because that will have to also be added to the ballot measure language.
Okay.
You get your share and then finish your A. Yeah, all five are independent. I hate to speak against them. That's why I'm not turning.
Okay.
Jim,
Yes, Tom.
I would like to also add a motion to establish an engineering advancement program beginning in years 6 through 10. And that would be a program that would be available if the board chooses to use it.
So that would be on which list? A list?
On the B list. Or any list they want to use it on. It's an engineering advancement program. So if they see an opportunity to set something up for acceleration, they take it.
By allocating portion of their funds from their money to that pot.
Right. It's program funds for each individual entity.
But it's only available after year 5.
Right.
That's that recommendation for the
So-
ballot.
So we have a recommendation. Everybody hear what the recommendation was?
It's
Did
unclear to me whether or not that's category A, B, or if it's outside the categories.
It was left undetermined as whether it's an A or a B. But in order to be effective and accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, it would almost have to be an A-list project, right? Yeah.
What I'm looking at on this is there's an opportunity here. If you see something that's promising, that looks like it would work well into a grant program in the future, but you need to have engineering work done on it before you can apply, here's your opportunity to queue it up.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm going to second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to create a engineering advancement program to be available after year 5 as an A-list project. And we have a second for that. So any further discussion?
I think we're
Mr.
making
Chair.
the ballot initiative too complex. This is Gene Bray.
I'm sorry, Gene, repeat your comment.
I think we're making the ballot initiative excessively complex.
Okay. Carlos, did you have a comment?
I just have general concerns over that. I do like the idea of having that flexibility for staff to be able, and or member governments, especially smaller ones, to be able to do this. But, you know, in the past, program funds like, and we have a lot of these program funds have received some criticism that they're nothing more than slush funds, you know, that there's too much discretion and it needs to be more concrete. If I took this to the voters today, they're not going to know what engineering is. They're not going to know what advancement is. You know, they're not going to understand the terminology unless it's very clear on the list. I'm a little concerned that taking this to the voter, there could be some weaknesses in this because it's not specific enough and has some, it just like I said, we've had issues again with the non-specificity of programs. So I like the idea. I don't have enough information to be able to support it one way or the other. If we take it to a vote for day, I'll be a no vote on this one.
Well, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, then all those in favor of the nomination, say aye.
Aye.
All those in favor, all those not in favor, say nay.
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 Okay, so maybe we ought to count the ayes this time, yes. So ayes, Joan, Tom,
Larry.
Richard, Larry. Anybody else?
And
And yes, okay. 5. Any other positives? Okay. 8 to 5. Somebody got that written down.
I put in here the CAT considered, I put in here the CAT considered including an A-list engineering advancement program with funding anticipated to start no earlier than year 6 of the authorization. And then I'll add that the vote failed 8 to 5. Yes.
Yeah, 5 to 8, yeah.
Comment, Jim, Jean Bray, I don't believe that the motion said that that was to be an A-list engineering advancement program. It was to be a category of engineering advancement without specificity as to A-list or B-list.
I think Tom was okay making it an A-list because if it was on B, then it really wouldn't do you any good in terms of starting to plan B-list projects as you were nearing the completion. Am I correct on? I don't. Okay, Tom says he's good with the way it is, Gene.
Hey, folks,
Okay.
point of order. Could I ask for maybe that we identify who's on what side of the issue here? I'm just getting confused. I'm so sorry.
Who's on what side of the issue?
Yeah, who is on the I vote and the nay votes?
I'll tell you that all of El Paso County reps, except you, were for it.
Here's the count that I have subject to anyone. The 5 in favor of the failed motion were Tom Viersba, Joan, Larry, Richard, and Ann. Were there any other positive votes that I didn't count? Then the 8 would be everybody else.
Okay.
Because we have 13.
Yeah, where I was going with that, I guess, is that at least 2 of us, I think, are kind of in the gray area between there. I think we support the notion, but not cluttering the ballot language up specifically. So I think that if there's a way to work through that, that would flip the issue. It's just that the cluttering the language, I think, forced me and I think one other of my colleagues to vote no. Not that we don't like the idea, it's just that we don't like the way that it would
My
be.
point is, we're not writing the language of the ballot measure today. We're writing the ideas and we're fleshing it out when we get to the ballot language writing. That'll be done by people besides us.
So yeah, this is a concept vote.
Yeah.
And the exact wording could be worked out later. Now, is that going to change some votes? If the phrase engineering advancement program is changed?
Yeah, see, I kind of fall in the same category as you, Dave. I like the concept, but I'm concerned about the language clutter. But I think Rick's comment was that, and Tom's comment is that we're not writing the language today. We're trying to flesh out concepts and to present to the board.
You know, I would support it with something that says concept or conceptually an engineering advancement program, and then let the details get flushed out in the future. I'm totally fine with that. I just don't want to, as I said, bog it down, adding needless ballot language. And that would probably flip the vote.
That would change.
Rev?
I don't think, if you've got one vote that apparently wants to take a revote, it isn't going to change the outcome. It's 8-5 right now, so it becomes 7. Is that right? 7-6.
7-6.
Yeah, but that still doesn't change it. It still fails.
Well, it may go 6-6. So, Scott, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the concept, but I think it's knowing that voting for this concept will in the future lead to a more complicated ballot language. I think you have to consider that.
Okay, let's move on. This may get booted back to us by the board or something. So we'll let's move on unless there's strong opposition to do so. Let's move to
Just one question, not to read. You are going to report though to the board the proposal that has been voted down, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
So item number 5, adding projects without additional elections. The staff recommendation you have before you. You guys, you want to cover what you?
Right. So we were
Please.
not recommending making a change to the ballot language, that if there was a new capital project not on the A list or B list, or if there was a new project that was not on the A or B list being proposed, that a new ballot major must be presented to the electorate. It is important to note that some smaller projects such as intersection safety improvements may occur as part of the defined A list programs. And those programs, we would recommend stay on the A list. And the example that has come up was the gap, example, there's no way we could really project that project coming forward. And we think that it would be important for something of that similar nature, that it would go back to the electorate. And that would be the decision of the board at that point.
Right. Any objection or further discussion on number 5?
Gene Bray,
Go ahead, Gene.
recommend we approve staff recommendations.
And we have a second by Richard. I would just like to make a comment that the C part of that having to do with supermajority would reference back to item 1, or is that we leave that to the board's discretion? No.
If I read this correctly, the need for supermajority vote is OBE because we're not allowing them to be added without a vote of the public.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's correct.
Is that, everybody agreement with that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right. Senior moment. All right, so we have a motion and a second to accept the staff recommendation for item number 5. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries. All right, where are we? I'm running out of my notes.
You want to hit 6 or you gonna skip again?
They want to do item 6. Eligibility for midstream projects. For new members joining midstream. You guys want to,
Right. So again, we were hesitant to change the ballot language that, again, we would ask legal counsel to provide potential ballot language for consideration if this is the direction we were asked to go. We would actually recommend deferring the decision on including new capital projects until a midstream new member was identified. And that could give us an opportunity to look at what revenue or additional revenue may be produced, what their potential allocation would be, and see how it fit in with the other A-list priority projects.
yeah, my comment, I guess, would be that there's a very low percentage, given that we've already addressed the joining to the most logical members. If something would have to change drastically in one of those communities, would be that someone would join midstream, I guess. I mean, it is a relative, in my opinion, a low percentage chance that somebody would join midstream. But again, it would require ballot language change. Tom?
Yeah, there is a consideration reference monument. They are looking at changing from a statutory community to a home rule. And that may be that seismic shift issue.
Okay.
Jim, sorry.
Go ahead, Gene.
It would seem to me that a simple solution to someone joining after the approval of the next PPRTA probably ought to contain ballot language for the projects to be added to the appropriate A or B lists. And the question that it leaves open to me that I don't have a clear answer on right now is, does that have to be approved by the new entity that wants to join, or does that need to be approved by all the voters in the RTA? And sort of leaning that it should probably be approved by all voters in the RTA, which then may expose that entity to having significant issues with joining. I'm not certain that this is don't know that there's a solution to how we handle this that works right now. It's not obvious to me. So with that, I'll just raise the concern and let it go.
Okay, Tom?
A consideration on whether they get both capital and maintenance. And I'm most familiar with Monument. If Monument were to join midstream, they also bring their revenue stream with them, because they're not currently being taxed for PPRTA within the town of Monument. So it would make sense to me that they should also get their capital, since they're bringing their cash along.
So I guess the language or the concept of the language that would have to be added to the PPRTA 3 ballot would be something general and vague. I'm sorry, and I'm probably putting my emotions into this, but something such as, if another member government joins somewhere in the 10 years of 2025 to 2034, and their members approve them joining, do they get capital projects immediately upon joining? Not know, and so in that ballot language in PPRTA 3, you would not be naming a prospective member. You would not be naming projects. You would not be naming dollars. It would just be a concept asking the PPRTA 3 voters to accept a new member government and grant them their capital projects instantaneously.
Not knowing what those projects would or could be.
So that would have to be the vague wording added to the PPRTA 3 ballot, asking the voters if they're okay with that concept, and and not seeing any projects or a member government name.
Jim, it's Rick.
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
if I'm reading
Just a
that
minute,
right,
Gail.
then that means that they decide to join in the year 4 and they haven't contributed up to year 4. But all of a sudden they decide to join and they have 8 projects. They haven't contributed anything up until that point to have funds available. Am I reading it correctly?
No, when they join, the current language says they only get maintenance.
Right.
Do you want to add language that says if any new member joins anywhere in the 10-year cycle, they get not only maintenance, but capital with their share, their population share of maintenance and capital upon them joining and contributing their revenue?
Well, I understand that, but what I'm saying is if they joined, they haven't contributed in the first 4 years because they haven't been part of the RTA. So if they join in the 4th year and then they can get both capital and maintenance, those funds are kind of have to come from somebody else because they haven't paid in for the first 4 years.
Well, it would depend on whether or not they are a net positive or a net negative to the pot, the whole pot. They would contribute something, but they'd get out. They would contribute what they contribute as of the day one they join. They'd get out what their population percentage is of the total population of the PPRTA as of the decennial census.
I'm just not explaining myself very well. If they don't join on the first day of the year 4, their contribution starts on that day. But if they have a project that they want to start that same day, they haven't contributed any funds to the program to do the project yet. They're just starting to contribute.
Yeah, okay, I understand. Tom wanted to say something.
Okay, thanks.
One of the things I think we can consider without trying to write the document today, we could say that once you join, you start getting maintenance funds right away, but your capital funds are delayed 1 year.
Or 2 years or some
or 2
time delay.
years or something to build up a reservoir in your own pot.
Yeah, I was thinking as Rick was explaining that a delayed, built-in delay for capital, you start getting maintenance and some kind of, yeah, or whatever year they join, yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Somebody understood what I was trying to say.
Yeah, got it. So where were we?
I guess the question is, do you want to allow some concept or a recommendation to the board that you're in favor of some concept language that allows a midstream member to get capital in some fashion, not just maintenance?
Yeah, that's probably a good way to put that. Are we entertaining a concept of doing that? Carlos?
Yeah, I'm just trying to I understand, by the way, I do support this idea of maybe delaying it just in the interest of fairness. But I'm looking at 6, is this really just, hypothetical situation that's not going to occur and we're really spending a lot of inordinate amount of time? Already Monument has said that they're not interested in joining today. Let me ask this question maybe to the people here in Monument. What's going to change? What conditions are going to change that's going to trigger this midstream proviso in the ballot language? I just want to understand what are we looking at that could change? Because today, clearly, they're not interested in joining.
Well, Rick lived this, but in discussions I've had with the town of Monument, they took a look at their population and they said that it doesn't make sense for them at that time. Their population is growing 45% in 6 years, however. And there may be a point in there when they get to be a big enough share of this where it makes sense. And they're growing rapidly. They're growing 1,000 homes a year at this point. And so that they're actively talking about a RTA for themselves and trying to make a decision. I think at this point, I can't speak for them, but trying to make a decision to join PPRTA or have a Tri-Lakes RTA.
If I might take a stab at that answer, Carlos, I think it might, we haven't heard definitively back from the leadership of Monument or Palmer Lake yet. It could be Fountain or Woodland Park. That could be midstreamers.
But they've also, the same question is that they've also declined today. And I'm, okay, so what, I guess really what I'd like to say here, my suggestion is maybe we just defer 6 until I get more information about what is that change that's going to occur that would have them reconsider joining the RTA, especially since our board has gone out to these entities, has asked that question, hey, we would like you to join, and they have said no. So, well, that's hypothetical. Growth, I do understand that growth, population growth, new houses and everything, but that has not persuaded the residents there to join the RTA. I'm just thinking that maybe I'd like to get more information about what this is going to solve, especially if we're going to put in language in the ballot, possibly that could be confusing to the voters. I just want to make sure that it's going to have some, that it's not going to confuse voters and they would say, no, this is too confusing. So if it was me, I would say just let's defer 6 until we get more information, unless we have to act today.
Reb?
We seem to be worried significantly about a ballot initiative that isn't going to be written until approximately July of 22, okay? Because it's already been decided the board has accepted the date of November, and the ballot has to be written in such a time that it's published and whatnot. And last I could recall, it was about July 1st, but I'm lost the change. My point is, the only purpose of putting this in front of the board is to let them know these are things that are going to have to be considered, because you're only going to write one ballot and vote on it in 22. Okay, so whatever is decided, whether it's for or against, I'm for the board seeing it and say, hey, this has to be changed, or no, we don't want to put it in the changed ballot.
All right. I think what I'd like to do is address Carlos's concern by just saying we'd be interested in addressing a concept that would allow a community to join midstream without being too specific, and see where the board wants to go with that. And this, that way we've at least signifying we've discussed it, that we've got some ideas towards that, what a concept might look like, and let the authors of the ballot language deal with the specifics. I do agree that, and Jean has mentioned this several times, the more we add, the more convoluted the vagueness and kind of stuff that we put in the ballot language, in the opinion of several people, puts us at risk of voter approval as we go forward. So Rick, you want?
A couple of thoughts. I agree with what you just said. Vague language that's new and different could be a negative. I think whoever suggested this, and I can't remember the author of this since it's been 6, 9, 12 months ago. I'm guessing that the author of this concept was trying to make the PPRTA more attractive to new members joining midstream, because then they could get the capital. If they're only getting maintenance, if they're contributing 100% of their contribution, but only getting back 35% maintenance, then it's not attractive for midstreamers to join. My other thought is somewhat unrelated, is if we, depending on how the board handles this and works through it on the 9th, June, a week from today, we may want to entertain a joint CAC board meeting, which
Bring beer.
which I think I suggested a year ago when we started this process is we may get to that point.
Yeah, so what if I propose this, that rather than make a hard recommendation, that we do like we did one of the others and just simply say that we discussed this idea of a concept with a potential delay in receipt of capital funds and not try to make a hard and fast recommendation? How does that sit well or not, or what? Okay, I'm sorry, Scott, I see yours and it was up before. I apologize.
I was just going to say, if we look at how we just voted on 5, we kind of set the precedent. We're not going to change the capital list without a vote of the people. So even if another entity comes in and wants to add capital project, I don't see, that's going to affect all of the entities. So I don't see how you could add projects without giving it to the voters of the entire PPRTA.
Okay. Gene?
My comment was going to be, it seems to me that some of what we're discussing right now is more appropriate for the IGA and how the member governments hammer that thing out to address new member being added. I'm not certain that it needs to be on the ballot language, but it probably more appropriately, it falls under the purview of the board and the IGA and how it's drafted.
Now, the legal guys will answer that one. Right, Rick?
Right. We'll have to yield it. If the concept gains traction, then we'll have to get with Jennifer Ivey and decide if it's IGA or ballot or both. My initial thought is it's both.
Okay.
Jim, may I ask a question, please?
Sure.
So what I put down here is on June 6th, that the CAC discussed the concept allowing midstream members and allowing funding for A-list capital projects. And right now, there's no recommendation to document. So I just want to make sure what I haven't read is correct for what you all are deciding
Say
at this point.
potential for delayed. Is that puts a different taste to it.
Mr. Chair, just a comment. I think the question that she's asking is this: do we need to put this to a vote now, or do we want to defer this till
Yeah,
later?
that was kind of my concept. Of
And the question is the specific wording, a delay, if adding a delay will drive a vote today, right? Because just want to understand what the discussion is. My feeling is, I hate to say, kick this can down the road a little bit, but I think I need more information before I could vote on this particular one. But with that said, I don't want to steamroll or make anybody feel like, if they feel like it's ready for a vote today, I would vote on it today, one way or the other.
I go back to Richard's comment. We don't decide anything. We
Okay.
recommend.
All right, so I'll entertain a recommendation for this. Either what I suggested of we just mentioned that we discussed it, or a motion to make a formal recommendation to the board. Anybody want to do anything? Okay.
I was just going to say, I'm happy to put in here that no formal vote was taken or recommendation is
That's fine.
provided, if
Okay.
that's the direction. That's what
Okay.
I thought I heard the first time.
Okay, chair's making a call. That's what we're going to do. Moving on to the next question. Sorry. All right. So that actually now, when we skip over, we've already covered the other items, and so that takes us to item 14.
Yeah, you skipped 10.
Didn't we did 10? We did not? Oh, we did not do 10. Sorry, my bad. Item number 10, weighted voting. Who wants to open that can of worms?
I'm suggesting you skip it. Yeah, I was just gonna say.
This is Scott. I recommend against weighted voting.
Yeah,
Second,
I think we ought to skip it.
Gene Gray.
Well, now you have a motion in a second.
yeah, so we have a motion and to not do weighted voting. I'm not sure that a particular councilman will be happy with that decision, but do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
We
Gene
have
Gray
a second.
seconded.
Okay,
That was Jean Bray.
Jean Bray made motion and Joan
Yeah.
seconded.
No, I thought someone else.
Oh,
made
Scott
motion.
Barnhart, Scott
Yeah,
Barnhart. made-
this is Scott. I made the motion.
Yeah, Scott.
And I think by tweaking the voting members in a different item, we kind of dealt with that. So I don't
Yes.
know whether we need to throw weighted voting on top of it.
That's a good point, and maybe we just refer back to the item agenda that had the number of council or a number of members. Was whichever one that was.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Okay.
It was number 13.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, number 13.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so can we just do that? Gail is just refer on the weighted voting and just say no vote was taken. Refer to item number 13, a recommendation for 13.
Well, we have a motion.
We didn't vote on 13, so let's no vote on this. Well, we got a motion and a,
You've already got a.
Yeah, we've got a motion.
yeah, okay, motion and a second. So I'll call for the question. All those in favor of not having weighted voted, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed or those who want weighted voting, say nay. All right, so our vote was no weighted voting. All right. So let's go to 14, improve cost estimates for capital projects.
Would you like me to read through this, or has everyone had the
Can't-
opportunity?
I think that the wording is, I don't have any problem with the wording. I'm just not sure where the item came from other than, well, I know where it came from, so I'll just be quiet.
Yeah.
I see no problem with it. I support the staff.
Yeah, and the reality was, it was just a concept thrown out. I don't know that there was really any discussion, but we felt as staff that we needed to respond and let you know, not only that the efforts we want to make on improving cost estimates, but also knowing that in our crystal balls, as we're looking 14 years in advance, it's best we can do, with 80% certainty on those estimates, that you're still in that, a negative 50% or plus 100%. And I think you guys have experienced even more than that, but our goal is to be more in that range in the future, knowing that there's still some things that, from a risk standpoint, regulatory things, all the stuff we've talked in the past may still come up and something we're going to have to address. But we did felt like it was important to talk about the industry standard from a construction cost estimating, particularly for this level of strategic planning.
And I think, Gail, to that, the comment that knowing where some of these comments have come from and from previous experience, adding after you have a project X and a cost number, that there's a percentage of design number that is in that's next to that number. So if you see something that's a 20% design, it's going to change. And you set expectations so that when you come back in with a $10 million change to a project and you've gone from 20% design to 80% design, it's expected that it's going to change. And I think we can manage expectations and concerns and arguments by sharing that piece of information. That's where some of this has come from. And in some cases for RTA 2, there was no estimate other than somebody throwing a number on a wall. And we're living with that as we go along. And so that's my input in here, is that when we throw a project number out there, we show what percent design that number is and we'll come up with a code to do that. And I think that helps manage expectation. Tom had his hand up and then Gene and then
So I
Rick.
think our response to 14 should be improved cost estimates for capital projects is generally better.
Is generally better. All right, Gene.
Well, let me finish laughing first. I'm very comfortable with the staff response. I do understand the 20%, 80%. It all varies. And with what's going on today with regard to construction costs, anything that anybody puts together, no matter how good it is probably not going to be accurate in 6 months, let alone a year. There's no recommendation that we need to make on this as far as I'm concerned. I'm comfortable with the staff response, and I'm comfortable that the staff of all of the government entities do the best job they can to provide us good estimates.
Rick?
This exists now. It's in the budget now. And the key Bev has for the past 2 or 3 years been moving the unused admin funds into this line item in the admin budget. And I don't have my 2021 budget here with me. But there's, probably half $500,000 in this now that it's been cumulative of maybe 125 per year of unused admin funds over 3 years. The key is on that middle paragraph that the administrative funds are available. And the Jennifer Ivey, the PPRTA attorney, has added the third sentence of the middle paragraph. PPRTA would contract for the services. In order to use PPRTA admin services, it's got to be a contract for services that Bev and I are managing. Now we can give substantial control of the consultants to the member governments, but Bev and I would have to have some involvement with that. Gail, any amplification to that? So it is available now.
Yeah, and I think Rick, you 100% characterized that correctly. And we're actually developing a scope of work that we plan on bringing to Rick and Beverly to talk about in the next several weeks to get that going.
But see, it implies that they're doing a poor job now, and I take exception to that. I think you guys do a fantastic job given the circumstances and the changes and things that you do. And so the mere implication that we've got to set up a separate fund and hire a contractor to inspect another employee or another contractor's work to see how well they did it is a waste of money, in my opinion. If you don't like what your contractor is doing, if they're consistently giving you poor estimates, then fire the contractor. And if you're not using a contractor, then you got to have a talk with your staff. But I just think the concept of hiring someone to check someone else's work to make it better is an implication that they're not doing a good job. So that's my personal feeling on this. So I don't know that. I think we're generally doing a good job is probably the right answer. But
Hey, Jim, I know I'm new here, but it is, and I can understand exactly what staff, the agency staff go through when it comes to developing these cost estimates and the volatility, not only of the material pricing, but then also the unknowns right now, developing a program level estimate versus, once you start project development and really start to get the project defined, it does change. But what I see here as an opportunity maybe would be using the PPRTA contract here on the cost estimates more as a, and maybe and again, since I'm new, maybe this already happens, but updating the program cost estimates for projects that haven't really made it far through or haven't begun project development. And that way there's a better idea of some of these, you know, like B-list projects. You would have an updated cost estimate that's performed, you know, halfway through through the life of the program, just as an idea.
So I think the concept that Gail and Jennifer Irvin have put forward is that these unused admin funds that are in the admin budget, but just over the past 3 or 4 years weren't put into the back into the big pot. They were kept as a accumulating line item in the admin budget, are for a member government to go through the process to recommend a consulting engineering firm to Bev and me. We would hire them, but then give the significant management of the design firm, engineering firm, to do improved cost estimates for the PPRTA 3 projects that the member government or member governments are adding to their list, and particularly it may be high profile or high priority PPRTA 3 capital projects that are already on their draft list, to go ahead and do some design on their top 5 or top 10 projects, even though they haven't gone to the voters yet, as far to improve on the cost estimates. Gail, do you want to amplify?
Yes, thank you, Rick. So really, for the intent for the use of financing you're talking about is really to do a more detailed cost assessment for strategic planning for projects that we want to be on the PPRTA A list in particular, and have it more fleshed out. So, and Ryan, I appreciate your comments. The one thing, if they're already on the existing A list, we can go and contract somebody that way. We've got funds, or we could do a line item transfer to advance it. What this is really meant to take a look at doing a total scope review, looking at your risk assessments, and to come up with a cost estimate in today's dollars, so we can actually want to take that and put that in a business plan as we bring those forward as for A-list projects. And I say that that's the approach the city's taken. I think that's similar to the approach the county's taken as well. But because we don't have a consultant on board, I mean, really right now it's just a project idea and a piece of paper. It's like a one line item. Like, and I'm not even saying this is a project, but let's say it's Woodman Road from Powers to Mark Shuffle, right? You know, if I can go and say that somebody needs to go in and look, well, what is that going to need to look like in the future? Is it going to be, it's a 4-lane today? Does it need to be 6-lane? Is that what makes sense? Are there other trail networks? Is there any other on-street bike facilities that need to be looked at? So doing that overall scope review and looking at those planning documents and the requirements as we know them today, and include those in the scope, looking at the risk assessment. I know we've talked a lot about PFAS contamination in some of the parts of the city. The ones now with some of the new greenhouse gas regulations, there's some other things that we're going to have to look at and plan for from a risk standpoint and program that into the projects. And then once we take that number, you know, remember we're getting those dollars in today's or like last year's dollars, and we need to go and look at it. Well, what does that mean 14 years from now? Right. And well, it's kind of develop that. So we do need some expertise. And I know you happen to say engineering consultant, and it may be one. I'm actually a proponent for finding a consultant that actually has more of the engineering cost estimators involved with it. They look at it a little bit different, and we almost need a little bit, maybe a different approach than we've taken in the past in some of the project planning.
You guys are the experts. So, you know, Carlos. And then Gene.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, I have a question, but Gene has his hand up.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is just a question for this 14, for this administrative funds being used. Is in practice, it's the only the city of Colorado Springs that's using this, or is El Paso County? Maybe this is a question for Jennifer, but who is using this fund today?
No one has used it yet. The city is intending to ask for some of the money. I don't know. I'll defer to Jennifer if the county is going to ask for some of that.
I just want to see how it's being used in practice. So Jennifer?
As Gail stated, nobody's using it today. We are looking at how we would work with PPRTA and or the city, because the PPRTA really has to contract it. So from that perspective, I think that we would want to look at one contract that maybe works for a lot of member governments, and work with the PPRTA and the other jurisdictions on that.
Yeah. And I will add too, both Jennifer's staff and my staff have been talking a lot too and looking at projects that really have joint jurisdiction. You know, I threw Woodman Road out and just one because we're talking about that for a different funding source. But I'll just talk about Mark Shuffle Road. I mean, you guys already know when we brought the budget amendment to get to design dollars to get that in advance, because there is such a huge safety issue on Mark Shuffle Road from North Carefree to Dublin. Today, if you look at the ownership on that right away, it goes back and forth through that entire stretch. You know, the city is making the commitment to bring all that right away in the near future, but we really need to look at that as really more of a regional, maybe joint jurisdiction effort when we go to do that kind of planning. So just to give you an example.
Okay. Gene, you had a hand up?
Yes, sir. This is for Rick. The second paragraph about PPRTA contracting for services under this causes me some concern about the amount of work that it will impose upon PPRTA staff now. Do you have any concerns over that? And is there a way to easily increase staff by one if that's what it's going to require in order to be able to manage various contracts like paragraph 2 of the staff response?
This is Rick. I don't know exactly how much work would be involved, but I will cross my fingers and hope Bev doesn't object. And I'll say, I think we can handle this additional piece of work. But keeping in mind that, you know, we may have to ask for extra FTEs, but right now I'll just swag it and say I don't anticipate, I do anticipate Bev and I can handle it.
All right, thank
You're
you.
here. Me too.
Thank you, Bev.
Okay. So do I have a motion to accept the staff response with this?
So moved. So moved.
Reb,
Great.
Second.
I'll take Gene this time. He lost out last time. So Gene, second. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion carries. Okay. All right, so here we are, folks. It's 4 o'clock. Yeah.
You just have, by
We-
my count, just 15 and 16. 15 is Gail's and she's stepped out for a second and that's just her financial scenarios. Shall we temporarily, since she can explain and defend it, do you want to jump down to 16 while we're waiting on Gail to come back?
Yes, let's do that. And drop to 16. That the maintenance of effort discussion. The staff is that we don't change anything at this point. So Richard? There you are.
Okay, I guess I probably feel more strongly on this than anything else on the table. If I'm reading it correctly, we are talking about leaving the base at 2004. Is that correct?
2004 is the current base, yes.
And this would leave it there. That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. I have had conversations with Rick. He knows my position. I have felt that it was ridiculous when this thing was passed in 2014 to leave it. It makes to almost meaningless anything that ought to be brought up to at least 2019. And I really don't know why that would be a problem for any of our jurisdictions. But it's a mockery. I believe when you and I discussed it, we thought that if we were taking the cost index for the country or this area, it would be 30-some% up to now from 2004. Isn't that about right, Rick? And I really, I'm not sure quite why the staff recommended that, and I'm not trying to make fun of anybody. It's just that it's just to me, if I were an elected official, I'd hate to run for re-election on that. If I was an existing elected official and not going to run again, I'd probably say, sure. But anyway.
Well, there's a point that baseline will be 20 years old by the time this goes back to the ballot in 2024. So just a point, I guess, for some who haven't been around very long. Anybody else? Scott, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I think it makes sense to reset the base year every time you put in a new 10-year program. So it'd be, I would say 2024 would have to be the next base year, just like it probably should have been 2014, this last program. Just my opinion.
Okay. Any
This
other
is
comments?
Bray, and I agree with Scott. He said it as well as I could have. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a.
Go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah, the risk, by the way, I do agree that it needs to be reset. I concur with that. But however, the crystal ball right now, it's broken. I'm working on it. If we have a recession or maybe a really good time, we could set a base year that we'll regret later. So I would prefer I don't know, I'm just not comfortable not knowing exactly what the economic conditions are. So, because we are sales tax driven, it is goes up, it goes down, it goes up and down. And so this base year thing we have to be very careful. I would prefer to have some sort of moving average in there. I'd have to think about that, but setting a year when that year could be a financial disaster, or it could be really, if it's really great, actually works against us. If it's a recession, it could work in our favor later on. So I just want to be careful about locking in a year or recommending a particular year when we don't know what financials will look like.
Well,
in the
I
future.
don't think we'd lock in a year in our recommendation. Someone would have to decide what that would be based on, all those conditions. Tom?
I think to Carlos's comments, the base year was set on 2004. We had a recession in 2007 and worked our way through it by leadership. And I think we could do the same thing again. We could still set it at 2024, and then the leadership still says, well, reality is we don't have as much money. Now, what are we going to do?
Well, my point is actually the opposite effect, the boom years, if it sets it too high. In other words, we're really a high number. And now next year, we have an unattainable maintenance of effort value. So actually the recession for a maintenance of effort is a good because the bar is lower. Right. So it's where we set the bar. I would say that we have to just be careful, because if we have a boom and it's really great for this base year, and then later on it starts declining, then we've run into a problem because we set the bar too high. That's my general concern. Yeah, inflation, but also cost of living. Yeah, there's a lot of factors that go in there. So I'd like to think about it rather than just saying it's a year. There's some, to your point, is that there is adjustments to it that make sense, like cost of living or indexes or something. I don't know what the right answer is, but I'm just concerned about just picking a year.
So we've had discussions about indexing it and tying it to some kind of inflationary factor, and in reality, in some of the smaller communities, that's a non-starter. Their budgets, you look back to some of the RAMA's maintenance or capital project budget, it hasn't really changed since the beginning of this thing, and the same would be true for some other Green Mountain Falls and some other folks. They really haven't changed all that much. But so what do we want to do, except I'm open for a nomination or a motion or further discussion. Rick, you wanted to say something.
Just an off the wall idea. All 5 member governments are meeting their maintenance of effort right now in their 2021 budgets. Pick 2021.
Do we need to propose a year and let we could propose the concept of, we think it needs to be updated. Somebody's got to decide what year that is.
Since we are recommending body, why not propose that we, item 1, it needs to be updated. Number 2, perhaps say that it should be updated to at least 2019.
Gene, you had a comment, just a minute. Richard, hold on to that, Richard. Gene, you had a comment?
Well, I was going to make a motion, and I'm mulling over the last comment.
Okay. Make it quick. I'm ready to move on.
Well, I'm going to take my hand down for now, so I'll come back to it.
Okay. Richard, do you want to turn that into a motion?
I move that this body recommend to the governing body that it definitely needs to be increased from 2004 to some future year. And we suggest 2019 as a reasonable point.
I second that because it's the mid-year point on PPRTA 2.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to change the base year to at least 2019. Any further discussion?
Oh, yeah, Jim.
Go ahead, Rick.
Why did Rick's comment not pick up some traffic? It made a lot of sense to me that they're all making their efforts right now. Why not use 21?
This is Beverly. I think 21 is really just too hot because of all the stimulus put into the economy from the federal government.
Okay, I just, Rich just happened to mention that everybody was making their maintenance effort in 21. And so I said, well, that makes sense.
Well,
And
but
if you're looking for a year-
21's maintenance of effort is based on 2020 tax receipts in the member governments.
There are 2 points about if you go to 21 versus 19. I would put forth 2 points. One, because of the pandemic, there is a lot of pent-up money and energy to spend it, and we're going to see that, I believe, in this year through the sales tax. Also, there is the fact that I believe it was last year that Amazon, for example, had to start pay everybody who buys their is now paying sales taxes back to the state. And that would make 21, the first point is the main one, frankly. That it's just, everything I've read says it is going to be a boom year. And frankly, the only thing that's liable to kill it is depending on what might happen in Washington, DC. And that's another unknown.
So Rick, I think we've got a motion on the floor. I think your point's taken. We can also include something in the language, but I think that Richard's points was that 19 was pre-pandemic, was a pretty good year. The numbers for internet sales tax and stuff are way up. If you move it to 21, I agree with Bev personally. I think it's a little high and probably a little unrealistic that kind of income is going to continue. But we have no idea, but it's not our decision necessarily, other than it just needs to be updated.
Can I mention something from the city's perspective, please, Jim? When the base year was set, it's currently at 2004. The city did not have 2C at the time. If we were to update it, even if it's 2019 or 2021, in either case, that 2C would be in there. If for some reason the city is not able to reauthorize 2C, that would just change that base year level of effort by $50 million per year. And honestly, that's just an unrealistic jump without having some identified funding, the long-term funding stream. So I just wanted to point that out and take that into consideration, that there's some other circumstances around keeping the base year closer to what it is today.
Good point. And Jennifer, just a second, I think that it could be updated beyond 2004, maybe prior to 2C, but it's still better than 2004. Jennifer, go ahead.
2015, I believe. Yes, 15 to 20 was the first authorization, and we just started the second one, which is from 21 through 26.
Jennifer?
I would just to give some insight into our maintenance of effort as well. I think Gail had a really good point. The county also had a Tabor ratchet vote in recent years. And so that would really affect us as well. And, who knows what that's going to look at. But I guess one of the things I just wanted to point out is that if you look at it, I think different jurisdictions have different impacts. And I think that, if you're going to recommend that we change that, I think it would be good if we were able to come back with a recommendation from our finance folks. Just to give you some understanding is that, the city's funding is different than the county's, and each jurisdiction has different strings and items attached. And specifically, if you look at the counties, we actually are a statutory county. And what that means is that we have restricted road and bridge funds. And as a result of that, we can't move funds in and out of our road and bridge funds. Those are what they are. And so we have a little bit of discretionary, but the Board of County Commissioners cannot take general funds and then put them into road and bridge. So there are certain statutory restrictions that we have as a county related to our funding that are different than some of the other jurisdictions. And I'm not going to speak for any other municipalities, but I'm certain that some of those municipalities have some of those considerations as well. So I guess I would, again, that's why I guess, in my opinion, just from a staff standpoint, we have to look at, when we're looking at things, when we're looking at these recommendations, and this is outside of, what we're making as far as joint staff recommendations. One of the things I wanted to look at as we went through this is what is broke? Is this broke?
Not many things on this page.
And one of the things is that we had, I think, a small occurrence of somebody not making a maintenance of effort. And I think the city, from my perspective and looking what they did is they really tried and made an effort to address that. And now we're way in excess of that. So I understand the discussion, but just as you think about this and make those decisions, number one, let us, if you're recommending to change it, let us go back to our finance people and provide some of those recommendations. But two, also keep in mind, as you're making your recommendations, I would just implore you to look at, if it's how that impacts, each jurisdiction as far as those maintenance of efforts.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Just a second, John. I got a couple of people who've had their hand up. Jean and then Ryan and then Joan.
Well, first, Jennifer, thank you. That shed some good light on it that I didn't know. You refreshed my memory. But what I was going to comment on is the initial PPRTA excluded maintenance funds that were in the capital improvements projects portion of the city government or city budget from being considered part of the level of effort. That being said, the same thing can occur if we reset the level of effort with regard to 2C. That money could be excluded by board action and not counted against the city's effort, which would solve the problem of what 2C causes if it's not reapproved or the follow-on is not reapproved. The other item is that I think is fly in the ointment is what Jennifer brought up is how do we do this in a fair manner that doesn't adversely affect someone like the county, just to pick an entity off of the top of my head. That needs to be looked at very carefully, but I am in agreement with the recommendation that we do need to reset it. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Scott, you had your hand up. Did you take it down?
I did take it down.
Okay, Ryan and then Joan.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Jennifer and Gail, that was very helpful, what you shared, and I can understand where the agencies are coming from and can see that, as I'm feeling right now, like I am being asked to make a recommendation in the dark with no data about what is actually the MOE for these two agencies. Like, what are they currently doing in the last couple of years? We're bringing in 2019. What was 2019? What can these agencies actually, what is actually fair and equitable to the agencies? And so I don't feel comfortable making a recommendation on a year. I think updating the MOEs is a good idea, but what year that is, I just don't have the data to make an educated recommendation.
Joan?
I understand what Jennifer is saying, but it just seems to me that we need to move past 2004. That's not realistic anymore. And if you want to make a recommendation to have the city and the county financial folks weigh in on this, that's fine. But at some point, we need to move the dime past 2004.
Okay. Tom?
Gene Bray.
Just a minute, Gene.
Okay.
Tom?
To keep in mind, when PPRTA 3 comes into play, 2019 will be 5 years in the rearview mirror. So.
Okay, Gene?
Do we have a motion on the floor now?
We do.
Maybe it's appropriate to suggest that the motion be withdrawn and that we reword it.
Well, we can do this. Another motion, a subsidiary motion to add some language in there that we reset the the base year to 2019 with the additional review by the financial staff of our member governments. Put a caveat on there. So I would offer that as a motion.
Well, we already have a motion on the floor.
Yeah, we
so-
have a motion to accept the current maintenance of effort and reset the base year to 2019. There's no other provisions on that. I'm adding the phrase with additional review by staff, financial staff to review this base year.
All right,
Does that make sense?
Okay.
I'm amending your motion,
First of all.
amending your language here.
Okay. But that, to do that, you need the acceptance of the person making the motion and the person who seconded it.
No, you do not.
I think it is, but.
It's usually
I
courtesy, but it's
would-
not required.
I would, my friend, I would be willing to accept that addition.
The friendly amendment, they
Tom
call
has
it.
just said he would.
It's called the friendly amendment, but I think we've
Yeah,
had this
well,
discussion before.
anyway.
That's really a formality,
Okay.
but yes, if you would accept it with the,
So it's accepted.
okay. So there
Okay,
you go.
so motion's been made, seconded, and modified and accepted. Let's call the question on the discussion on 16. So all those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed to the wording of that one, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. And Nichols. And Nichols, Ryan, Reb, and myself. Any other names that I missed? Okay,
Question, have we still got 9 or 13? Well, the reason I'm asking is 5-4 with it, would still pass.
all right, so we're down to one and we still have a few other business items we need to cover up, but let me ask this question, and Gail, this is not directed at you personally. Do we really need to figure out a scenario for determining revenue estimates for the next 10 years? I mean, is that really something that the CAC should be making a recommendation on?
I think right now that it's, the staff's recommendation was really to do nothing right now, that we had worked up 4 scenarios that kind of showed the range that revenue projections could be. They, as you can see, there are different levels of conservative approaches that all have some flexibility and some adaptability. But I think it would be best to leave those as is until we're into at least mid 2022 when we're looking at those cutoffs. I think their bigger question is going to be is how do we fit in the capital projects proposed by the smaller member governments and the cutoff threshold that the city and county are going to use between their A and B list projects.
Rick?
Yeah, at some point, maybe 9 months, 10 months, 11 months from now, Gail and Jennifer and whomever, and maybe Bev are going to need to recommend a gross dollar figure for PPRTA 3 for everybody's planning purposes as they flesh out their A and B list. Or whether it's $1.1 billion, $1.2 billion, $1.3 billion, $1.5 billion, whatever it is, and then do the 55% for the capital. Everybody's gonna need to know a number. So that might be April or May of next year. So, but the 5 scenarios that Gail has, I think are just for preliminary planning. And as we get more time and information under our belts in April or May of next year, at some point, we're gonna have to pick a figure.
Yeah, and as a career long-term fiscal planner and fiscal strategist and whatnot, I understand the need when you're building a strategic plan to have some number in mind. You got to have something to build to. I get it. I just think it's too early, and I'm not sure that we're prepared to do that. And so with the CAC's concurrence, I'd like to delay any discussion on item number 15 about planning scenarios to another time? Any disagreement with that?
No.
If you speak now, forever hold your peace. Okay, so, all right, that was painful, but it was necessary. I agree with the comment. My own personal one was that you kind of start with what's broken. We've discussed a lot of things that ain't broke, in my opinion. So, but so be it. So let's move on to item 7C. It's an informational item, City of Colorado Springs monthly change order and property acquisition report. Any questions for Gail while she's here? Hearing none, we're moving on to item 7D, the raised grant application for the railroad. The information is in your packet. Gail, do you have anything you want to add to that? It's informational only at this point.
No, I just wanted to thank you in advance for taking a look at it. I know you guys have been very concerned, but accommodating on looking at ways to get that siding bridge. And we recognize that, as we've mentioned many times, that siding bridge is needed at the same time as the mainline bridge. We've been looking for other opportunities to help support the construction of that project. And this is an opportunity that I think that we can do well and score well with. And we would appreciate any support that you would give. And I know this is informational for you today, but we are going to be asking the board for a letter of recommendation.
Okay, that the recommendation is the last sentence in that packet. Should we change this and support this recommendation to the board instead of just being informational? Or can we do that without having the 72-hour notice thing?
I think it wouldn't be legally challenged if you want to amend your agenda to change info to recommendation. It would not be.
Would not be.
Would not
Okay.
be legally challenged.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion. If you want to just let it go forward as information item, but if we want to add our support to this and a recommendation, then we'll need to modify the agenda and change it from an informational to a recommendation. And so, Joan, do you have a comment?
Mr. Chair, I move that we amend the agenda to take this from an informational item to a recommendation.
And we have a second with Tom Viersba. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
7D. All those opposed say nay. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Joan?
I move a recommendation, positive recommendation on this matter as presented.
We have a motion and a second, Tom Viersba second, to recommend to the board that they write that letter of support and support the city's request for these funds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, administrative actions, report recent board actions. That, I guess that's in your deal.
Were there any questions about the quarterly reports?
Yeah, any questions about the quarterly report? For the newer members, I've said this, these quarterly reports is your tool to go back to your constituents and ask questions about the projects and things that are happening in your area or neighborhood or people you know. A lot of work goes into this, and I think it's an outstanding document. So I thank you, staff and folks, for putting this together. It's a great document. Agenda topics for next meeting. Anybody got anything burning? You want to talk about the matrix again? Oh, no. So any topics for next meeting? Okay, hearing none. Communications, any of the members of the CAC have a communication? Carlos?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just Communications, just to announce, you may have heard on the news that I'm on the Colorado Independent Legislative Redistricting Commission. I'm a commissioner from the 5th Congressional District, so we've been pretty busy. So if you guys have any ideas on how we should be drawing our legislative districts, please let me know. Yeah, no, it's been a very interesting process, and I've learned a lot from this committee. They've elected me as chair of the commission too, as well. So I'm sorry. But no, I just want to say I'm here to serve you guys. I know you guys are all connected to your political constituencies here and elected leaders. I'm here to listen and take that back to our commissions. It's been kind of interesting. I've been receiving letters from the PPRTA about the communities of interest. So I'm on the receiving end of some of these letters. But it's an honor and a privilege to serve. And if you have ideas on what we should be doing for our redistricting, please let me know. So thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Rick's holding up the 2021 annual report. For those on the camera, it is available. See Rick if you want some for distribution of those for this report. All right, I did what? 8A, administrative actions and reports. A, reports of recent, oh, yeah, it's info, it's in your pack. It's after the annual report in my packet. So, okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Don't hang yourself trying to get to, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
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 Hey, guys, everybody, thank you all so much for your time and patience. This has been painful, but hopefully we've come up with some good discussions for the board. So thank everyone. Have a great time. Be safe.